Hey folks, in this video I'm going to be building a Frontend Mentor challenge for this agency homepage using HTML and SCSS. The top hero section has a phone image over a curved background shape, and at larger viewports it has some decorative spring images that appear. There's also a features section that goes from one column on mobile to 3 columns on desktop. But it was a bit more tricky than you might think because on tablet, the layout gets kind of quirky with how the numbers are positioned on the side, but I did get this working with CSS Grid. And Grid once again came to the rescue for this Founders section in order to overlap the photo with the purple content block. I also used Google Fonts, but I loaded the font files locally instead of using Google's CDN. This is a more privacy-minded approach that is more compliant with the EU guidelines. Overall, this website was a really fun website to build, and in this video, I'll be showing you exactly how I did all of this from beginning to end. All right, let's get into it. All right, so I have the project open in VS Code, and these files that we have here are the starter files that you can get when you download the challenge from Frontend Mentor. So we have our index.html file with some starter copy and stuff. Then we have an assets folder, and in there are images and also font files. Now, when I'm working in my projects, I usually will use Sass for my styles. And what I like to do is set up my Sass files in a new folder, and I'm going to call this SCSS. In the SCSS folder, I'm going to create a new style.scss. And I also want to create some subfolders. I'm going to use an existing project to get some of these styles that I use all the time. So here I have my other project. What I'm interested in is some of these util styles that I use, which I'm going to show you how they work. So I'm going to copy breakpoints and also functions, and then I'm going to paste them in my SCSS folder. Okay, so now we have our main style SCSS file, and we also have a function Sass file and a breakpoint Sass file. The breakpoints are Sass mixins that I use for my media queries just because I can save all the widths in these Sass maps. And it's just a bit quicker to load the media queries this way. And then in the functions.scss file, we have a rem function and an em function. And I use these to convert from pixels to rems or to ems. And again, it just kind of does the math for you. It divides things by 16, which is the base font size. This makes writing the sizing in rems and ems a lot easier. Now, since we have these additional Sass files, we do need to load them in our style.scss file. Now, usually what I would do is create in the Sass folder a subfolder, and I'm going to call this util. And then I'm going to put both the breakpoints and the functions Sass file in that util folder so that we kind of keep them together. And because we have this subfolder, I'm going to need to create an index.scss file for that. So underscore index.scss. And in here, I'm going to forward both the breakpoints and the functions. So now this is going to forward, basically taking all the styles from the breakpoints and functions Sass file. And so when we write our styles or the different components of the website, we can use the util folder, and then we'll have access to breakpoints and the functions that we need to use. What I also usually do is in the SCSS folder, I'm going to create another subfolder. I'm going to call this components. And then we'll have one more subfolder, and I'm going to call that global. So these are kind of my main subfolders in my Sass styles. So in global, similarly, we need to create a new file for the index Sass file. And then I also want to create a Sass file for my global styles. Let's start with maybe some boilerplate styles. And then I'm also probably going to create some more global styles, but we'll get to those later. Because I created a global subfolder, I do need to load those styles in our main Sass files as well. You can use forward or use in this case. I've seen people use for most cases, so I'm going to do that here. So in our main Sass file, we're going to load the global styles. Let's kind of close these up. And this is the global styles. So we also want to forward boilerplate. So in our boilerplate styles, let's start writing some global styles. One that you definitely want to do is before and after. So for any element, including any pseudo elements, you want to set box sizing to border box. And this will ensure that padding will not add to the width or height of an element, but it's kind of included. And this is something that you definitely want to do in all cases. Then we're going to reset some styles for elements and kind of get rid of the browser defaults. So body, I want to set margin to 0 because there's some default margin there. And another set of elements that I want to reset the margin to 0 on is the H tags because they always have margin top and bottom. So we're just going to reset those to 0. I'm also going to do this to the paragraph tag because that will also have some default margin top and bottom. So we'll start out by saying margin 0 and start from scratch there. Another element that we want to reset is the unordered list element. So I'm going to set margin to 0 and padding to 0 for that. We also want to set images to all be display block by default. This will get rid of the small space at the bottom for descender letters that browsers add to all inline elements, and images by default are inline, so we want to set them all to be display block. Okay, so I think that's pretty good for the resets for now. So let's go in our index.html file and see what we have here. Right now, in our Sass files, we have our main style.scss file, and I actually want to use the live Sass extension. So down here, the watch Sass button, I'm going to press that. So it's going to start watching our Sass files. And then you can see that this is something that I've done just custom. It's created a dist folder, and then it's loaded our styles converted to CSS there. So by default, if you don't have this customization that I have, it's simply going to generate the final CSS file in the same location as your main SCSS file. So because we have this style here, we need to load our CSS file in our HTML file. You can do that by adding a link tag in the header. So link and then CSS, and then we need to write the path to the final style.css file. Since it's in the dist folder, I'm going to navigate there by going to / to go to the root project, and then you can see the autocomplete is working. So dist and then style.css. I think that's good for now. Let's kind of close the head tag, and this I used Prettier and it just removed the spaces from everything, so we can figure that out later. But let's just make sure that we have our website working. So what I want to do is use the live server extension, which I do have installed, and I'm going to click the go live button. We want to go to our browser. So we have the website loading, which is great. Let's get our inspector loaded. Kind of have my windows set up here. There we go. So now we have our styles on the left and we have our website on the right. Okay, so this looks good in terms of our setup. What we need to do is just kind of start setting up things based on the design that we have. In Figma, we have the Figma design, and this is a premium feature of Frontend Mentor. You know, if you have the free plan, you can, I think, download a JPEG mockup, but if you are part of the pro plan, you can download a Figma or sketch file. I do have pro just because it makes things a lot easier to be able to work from a Figma design file. So in the design file, the first thing we want to do is set up the colors and the fonts. And they have a really nice frame here in Figma, which tells you the colors and stuff. We can basically start copying the color values. And what I like to do for my colors is save them as CSS custom properties. Let's just get this first color here. If I hold down Control, I can directly select this hex code. And then let's go back to VS Code, go on the full window here. And we need to decide where we want to save our styles. So I usually save them in the global Sass folder. So let's create a new file. And I'm going to say _colors.scss. And because I've added a new partial, we want to load it in our index.scss file. So forward colors, if I can type, there we go. Okay, so here's our colors. And for colors, I usually save them in the root element. We have that first color, which was kind of like this, I guess, purple color. I don't know if they named it anything, but we'll just say purple. So we're going to create our CSS custom properties here. So we have to start them with a double dash or double hyphen. And we'll say color purple. And then here we will paste in the hex code. However, it is, I think, best practice to use HSL formats. So in VS Code, if you hover over the swatch, it'll load this color picker and you can click on that top bar to convert it to different color formats. I use HSL. It lets you have more control if you need to change the, darkness or lightness or the saturation of a color more programmatically. So that's our first color. And now let's kind of just go down the line here. And the next one is this sort of green color. So I'm going to Copy that hex code, go to VS Code, color green. And again, we're pasting the hex code and then convert that to HSL. And the next one is lighter purple. So maybe we'll call this first one dark purple, but let's copy that hex code again. Let's name the first one color maybe dark purple. And maybe I'm just going to duplicate this one. So you can use a VS Code shortcut. I think it's Alt-Shift-Down arrow. I have custom mapped that to be Control-D. And we'll just say this is going to be purple. It's almost like a gray purple color. Then we have almost white and then white. So I copy that and color, I'll just say light gray. It's like extremely light gray. And then we have white. All right. Okay, let's see what else we got. So looks like that was all the colors. So that was pretty good. Next up is our typography. Now this is going to be a slightly more tricky than the colors. The reason for this is that these fonts, Frances, and then Manrope for the body text, you can load them from Google Fonts. So if we look in our assets folder here from Frontend Mentor, we have a fonts folder, and we have folders for each of these font families. However, it looks like we just have the TrueType files, TrueType font files, which need the WOFF, WOFF, or WOFF2 file formats for fonts. It's just like more modern. Unfortunately, we're on Google Fonts here, and I've looked up the Frances font. So if you download the font files from Google Fonts, the TrueType font files, but you need the WOFF font formats, fortunately, you can use this really helpful tool called Google Web Fonts Helper. And let's say I want to look up the font Frances, then you can select the different weights that you want, and then you can download them as different file formats. So what format should you use right now? There's this helpful article on CSS tricks, how to use font face in CSS. And this is if you want to load the fonts locally. You can host Google Fonts, or not host them. You can load Google Fonts just from their CDN, Content Delivery Network, but that will put more weight on your page because you have to download it. And also there's some privacy concerns with GDPR in the EU. So for a lot of cases, you might really just want to load them locally. So that's what we're going to try to do here. So if you're loading the fonts locally from your own server, what you want to do is you need to load it with the font face @ rule, and then set the name and then link to where the font file. So right now, what CSS Tricks is telling us is that you really mainly need to support the WOFF and WOFF2. I don't know how people pronounce it. And then it's saying you could probably get away with just WOFF2 these days for file formats. And then they have the browser support information, which is really helpful from Can I Use, which I use all the time. And so this is the WOFF 2.0. You can see that it's basically supported in all modern browsers, not IE11, and then also not Opera Mini, but all the other browsers are fine. So we might just do the WOFF 2 for this website. We need to figure out what font weights we need to download, because each of these is going to add weight to your font file. So you don't want to download every single weight. So let's check out our design file in Figma and see which weights we need. So for Frances, which is the headline font, semi-bold, so just one weight, which is good because that'll be a bit lighter. Semi-bold is 6, and we want to uncheck regular since we're not using that. Okay, so it's just 600. The character set is Latin for the Latin alphabet. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now that we've downloaded the font file, let's go back to Explore, and I'm going to go to the Downloads folder, and here's the folder, the zip file that we downloaded. So I'm going to copy the font file. So let's go into our main project folder, and in the Assets, Fonts, I might just put it in the Assets Fonts folder. So let's download the other font. And that one was called Manrope. go to Google Web Font Helper, Manrope, and then we need to get the weights. Looks like it's just regular. So this is good. They're not using too many different font families or font weights. Okay, so this is good. We have regular weight. We want the modern browsers, and then we'll download. So we'll copy that and paste it in. So now we need to copy these font faces and put them in our styles. I guess we'll start with the Manrope one since we have it open here. So I'm just going to copy this, go back to VS Code, and we need to load the font somewhere in our style. So let's figure out where we want to load that. Could create a new Sass partial here, so maybe let's try doing that. So we'll say _fonts.scss. And since we have a new Sass partial, we need to forward it. And now I'm going to paste it in here. So let's just delete the comment here. Okay, so let's just make sure the path is correct. So we're in the fonts file, which is in the global Sass folder, and we need to get from this folder up to the assets fonts. So the double dot will go up one level. So we go up one level to the Sass folder. We actually need to go one up more from that. So we'll do another double dot to go up to the root, and now you can see it's kind of loading. And now we want to go to the assets folder, and I don't want to delete everything, so I'm just going to manually type in assets fonts, and then now this seems to be working. So we can do the same thing for the other font. So it was Frances, and then we need to figure out the weights, and it was semi-bold 600. So let's just do that and uncheck regular, and then copy that. And you can see here, the font weight that we selected is 600 here. So we just want to make sure that you have that. There we go. And just kind of delete these comments. And then we're going to do the same thing. So there we go. And now we can load the font family in our styles for both Manrope and Frances. So let's test to make sure these are working. So in our styles, let's go into our maybe boilerplate, and then these are kind of for typography styles. So what I usually do is I'm actually going to create another new file, typography.scss. And I realize that it might seem weird that I'm creating these different files just for like, a few lines of styles, but I do think it helps with organization. We're just going to do this and then forward typography. And now in typography, we can try to use our new font families. So first for the headline tags, H1, H2, H3, we're going to say font family, and that one was Manrope, or I think it was Frances for the, yeah, this is for the title font. So let's just copy that. Oops. And then if it's not available, then you need a fallback just in case, Georgia. And then for the other font family, I might just set it on the body tag. So font family, and we want to use Manrope. And this is a sans serif. There we go. So now let's add some text to our website just to make sure that these fonts are actually loading. So we have some regular text here, but let's add maybe an H1 tag. Headline test here. Save that. And then let's check our website and see if the fonts are getting loaded. And the fonts look different, which is good. It actually does look like it matches what we have here in the design, which is awesome. So let's inspect the H1 tag. You can see it's loading the Frances font, which is good. And one way you can test if you're not sure if the font is actually getting loaded, like if it looks similar to your default, what you can do is just like change the name so it's like something kind of different. And then you can see now it's doing Georgia, or you can add whatever font would be most recognizable to you. So that's one way that I test. And this looks pretty good too. Yeah, so Manrope. So if we change a name, you can see it changes to Arial. So the fact that it's changing when it's loading Manrope means that it is working. Next up, let's look at the styles for the different typography elements. So we have a few different sizes here. So we have a heading large, which is 80 pixels, heading medium, which is 56, heading small 32. Then we have body text, which is 18. However, one thing I usually try to do with my typography is, because the font size changes from mobile to desktop, so it's smaller on mobile and then gets bigger on desktop, I like using the clamp function to get responsive typography so it'll change without needing media queries. So for example, let me just show you the H1 tag. Here we actually have a tablet and mobile design. So on desktop, this is the main H1 tag. And if we look, it's heading L, which is 80 pixels on desktop. And that same element on tablet is going to be 60, and then on mobile it's going to be 50. So unfortunately, the 50 and 60, they're not listed here, so we kind of have to go off the design. So what I'm probably going to do is set the font sizes for the H1 tag, since that's where it's getting used. And then for the other headings, I'm also probably going to attach those styles to the headline tag. So for example, this top one is going to be H1. And then if we go here, this might be H2 or maybe H3 tags. We can say that this whole section would be under a features section, and then each of these individual ones would be H3. And then this one would probably be H2. So that's kind of how I do the sizes. So I'll show you how I do the fluid typography styles. So let's start with the H1 tag. So what I'm going to do is, if we just remember, this was 80 on desktop. I'm actually just going to skip the tablet because it's going to be between mobile and desktop. So 50 on mobile. So 50 to 80. So what I'm going to do is go to our code, and let's just kind of get our window for the website here. So right now we just have the defaults from the browser. When I'm setting my responsive font sizes, I'm going to use this website, which is super helpful. It's called Fluid Typography Calculator. So if we do a search, Fluid Typography Calculator, it is going to be this first result here. And let me just zoom in so you can read that a little bit better. Fluid Typography Calculator. And this is the website. So what happens is you set the minimum font size, which is going to be the mobile font size. So this is the smallest font size. And I'm just going to use pixels since that's what we got in the design. And then the maximum font size is the maximum font size. So you don't want it to get larger than 80 pixels. And that's going to be for desktop. Then you want to set your mobile viewport. It looks like it's 320 by default. I think the iPhone 11 is 375, so I'm going to say 375 pixels. And then the maximum viewport is basically the viewport where you want to hit that maximum font size. So if we go to our design, we can kind of see right now the design is set at 1440. You can see all the content in the website is kind of limited to about 1110 pixels wide. So you can kind of choose what you want for the max viewport. I'm probably just going to do the container size. 1100 pixels maybe. It doesn't have to be exact. It can be kind of just a general ballpark, and you can always tweak things later. So now that I've input all the values that I wanted, the website's going to generate some styles here that we can copy. And this is again for the H1 tag. So what I'm going to do is in VS Code, let's go into our typography.scss file, and I'm going to add a new selector for the H1 tag. So H1, and then we're just going to paste what we got from the website. So now we have, the first line is a fallback font size for older browsers that don't use clamp. I think it's really just IE11 at this point. We can double check this at caniuse.com. Type in clamp. And yeah, so it's like only IE11 and then Opera Mini that don't support clamp. We don't need that fallback font size in my opinion. So the way that clamp works is there's 3 parameters. So this first parameter is the minimum font size. The last parameter is the maximum font size. So it's converted our 50 pixels to 3.125 rems, and it's converted 80 pixels to 5 rems. And then in the middle is where kind of the magic of the fluid typography happens, where you have a combined font size of 2.155 rems plus 4.1 VW viewport width. So this is the 4 viewport widths is where the font size will increase as your viewport width increases. And then you kind of have this 2.1 rems to be sort of like your baseline. And that's also helpful because viewports are not accessible in terms of if you change your font size in the browser. they won't get affected because viewport width is not going to change. So if you're using this combined value for your font size, you do want to make sure that you have at least a good chunk of it getting set using rems. But again, I'm using the fluid typography calculator, so it does all the work for you, which is like kind of nice. And another thing that I do is, if you remember in the functions, I have this rem function that converts pixels to rems. So just to make it easier for me to eyeball, I'm going to actually replace this 3.125 rems with our rem function. So u rem, and then it was 50. So this just makes it easier for me to eyeball if I'm going back later on, u rem 80. So then I know, looking at this, that on mobile, the font size for the H1 tag should be 50 pixels, and then on desktop, it should be 80. Let's do that. Another thing we probably want to do is want to set some global styles for our H tags. So if you remember the SCSS font family, we want it to be semi-bold. So set the font weight to 600. And then another thing I usually do is I'm going to set a line height of 1.1 for my headline styles. And I guess while I'm here, I think it's good to set a uniform line height for your body tag so that by default, the text elements will inherit that. And 1.5 is what is considered best for accessibility in terms of the line spacing. But sometimes I use 1.3 just because 1.5 does seem quite a bit. So now, since we added our H1 tag font sizes, we want to check that in our website. So let's go back to our website, and you can see the headline text looks a lot bigger. So again, we want it to be 50 on mobile and then 80 on desktop. So let's inspect this. And then usually it's going to be the rules. So we can see our rules are working, which is good. And then on the computer tab is where it kind of converts the clamp function to the final calculated font size. So I use this to kind of verify that things are looking good. So you can see here now it's converted 68.6 pixels. So let's check mobile by using responsive design mode in Firefox. I'm going to select iPhone 11. So I can see font size is 50 pixels. And if you drag this right edge here, you can even make it smaller. You can see it's not getting larger. It's not getting smaller than 50. And then it's getting larger as we increase the viewport. So now we can select a laptop. So it's going to be 1440 pixels wide for the viewport. And we can see that the headline is bigger. In the computer tab, it is 80 pixels big. So this is great because it's matching the design. So maybe we'll just leave this here for now, since we're going to be adding some other font sizes. So after the H1 tag, let's look at the design and see what the other headline styles are going to be. So this one was the H1 tag. If we go down, this is going to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something for accessibility, which is this section here with these 3 features. I'm going to add a hidden H2 tag, and it's going to say just features, which will make these headlines here H3 tags. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's going to make this website more accessible if you're using a screen reader to navigate. Just because having each section have its own headline, I think will be more helpful when you're navigating. And obviously, this website's not really big, it's pretty small. But if you have a lot of sections on your website, I think it's good to have H2 tags for each section so that screen readers, which can navigate by just jumping from H tag to H tag, it'll make it easier for them to navigate. I'll show you how I'll do that. So that's going to be a hidden H2 tag. So anyway, these are going to be H3 tags. And then at the bottom, this is probably going to be an H2 tag because it'll be the header for this section. So let's start with this H2 tag just to go in order, and then we'll go back and do these H3 tags. So this H2 tag on desktop is heading medium, which is 56 pixels. And then on tablet, it's a little bit smaller, 48. And then on mobile, it's 32. So I'm just going to go from 32 to 56. So what we can do is go back to our fluid typography calculator, and we can leave the viewport values the same, but I'm just going to change the minimum and maximum font size. 32 for small, and then 56 for the larger one. So we can copy this, and then we can go to VS Code, and we're going to set this on the H2 tag. So H2, I'm going to save to run prettier, and we're going to get rid of this. And then again, I'm probably going to use my rem function. So u rem 32, and then urem 56. Save that. So now that's the h2 tag. And we just want to test that. So just for testing purposes, I'm going to add an h2 tag. So you can see, oops, we have our h2 tag, and we'll inspect that. And we have in the computer tab 56 pixels for desktop, which is correct. And now it's changed to iPhone, and it is 30, just a little bit bigger than 32, but you know, that's fine. That's really not going to be visibly different from, you know, what it was. Cool. So then after that, let's do the h3 tag. So the h3 tag is going to be these things here. So on mobile, this is 28. And then on desktop is 32. So 28 and 32. So again, we're going to go here to the fluid typography calculator, 28 and 32. So now we can copy that, and we're going to set this on our h3 tag styles. There we go. And then again, we want to convert this. I think it was 28 and then 32. So let's test out our h3 tag. And then go on our website and inspect the h3 tag. And then again, I'll just filter for font size in our computer tab. So 28, wait, let's go back to iPhone 11. So yeah, 28. And then for laptop, it is 32. Awesome. So we have our H tag styles, font sizes. We do kind of want to check the line height as well, because I noticed that it seemed maybe bigger than the 1.1 that I set. So let's go back up to the H1 tag. So in Figma, it's telling us that it is 1550. So it's actually 1. So if the line height is the same as a font size, the line height value can be set to 1. So it's 100% of the font size. And then let's go to desktop, and it is 1880. So H1 tag, I think we can leave it at 1.1 just to have a little bit more spacing. And the H2 tag, 56 and 64, so it's a little bit different. And it's 48 and 32. So what I usually do, I don't know if this is the best way, but I just pull out the calculator. So for mobile, it's 48 divided by 32. So that's 1.5 for the H2 tags. Let's just see what it is on desktop. 64 line height divided by 56, 1.1. So it's kind of the same. I'm kind of inclined to maybe leave it as 1.1, and we'll just add some spacing with margin. Okay, the last one we want to do is the body text, and there's not a ton of body text here. There's this paragraph here. We'll see what that is. So the AG body styles, and that is 18 pixels on desktop, and I'm assuming it's the same here. Yeah, body. So let's see. So 18 pixels on desktop. Let's see what that is on mobile. 16 and 16. So it's going to be 16 and 18. Not a huge amount of difference, but we might as well punch it into the fluid typography calculator. So 18 and 16. And we're going to set this to the paragraph tag because most of the body text is going to be in there. So going back again to the typography, we're just going to add it under the H3 tag styles. And again, we'll just remove the fallback. One rem is 16 pixels, but we'll just use our rem function anyway. And then urem 18. So now let's go back to our index.html file, and I'm just going to add some paragraph with lorem ipsum text. So now on our website, we have a paragraph here, and it is font size 16. Wait, I think that should be 18. What do we have for iPhone? 18. Did I do this backwards? Oh, I did. 16 and 18. There we go. So let's just fix what we have there. There's no easy way to just, I really just want to copy that clamp function. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit, copy it directly from the website, and actually just really want the middle numbers. So now let's just replace the middle numbers and comma. There we go. So now we can check our paragraph. And now it is 16 on mobile, and on laptop it is 18. Okay, so we're all set there. So there is one more global style that I want to kind of set up before we actually start building the actual website, and that is related to the wrapper or container on the website for the website content. So what I mean by that is if we look at the desktop design, we have a layout grid that we can show. So let me just show that. So you can see that all the actual content on the website is limited to within these columns, and that's narrower than the 1440 pixel wide viewport width that we have for this desktop design. And this is a pretty common practice because, if you have a really huge ultra wide monitor, you don't want the text to go all the way from the left to the right because that would really affect readability. So usually what you do is you kind of limit the content to a certain pixel width. I think this one's probably 1110 pixels wide, or 1100. And then you center it for large desktops. And then for mobile, and also I guess tablet to a certain extent, what happens is, okay, they don't have a layout grid here, but basically you have the content taking up 100% of the width, except you have some space on the left and the right for just to have a little bit of extra space. So it looks like we have 16 pixels of space on the left and the right. And then again, it's centered. So I'm going to put all those things that we want to happen in terms of the wrapper spacing and sizing into some style rules. And then we can use that on our website. So let me show you how I do that. Oh, let's first get the width of the actual content here. So 1110 pixels wide. If we go to VS Code, I'm just going to open the website on the right side. So what's happening is, let me just get rid of that. Right now, everything is going all the way across because we haven't really added any styles to say otherwise in terms of the width. So by default, block elements will go and take up 100% of the width of the parent element. So what we want to do is we want to add some styles to change that. So what I want to do is I want to create a class that we're going to sort of set these different width styles in. I'm going to call this wrapper. Now, let me actually create some elements in here. So for example, in the body, let's say we have a section tag, and then in here we'll have a div with a class of wrapper. And in here, let's just kind of move all this copy that we created earlier. So now we've put things in this wrapper class. So wrapper, and then it's in the section tag. And the reason that we have both the section and the wrapper class is because I want the background color that we have to go all the way to the left and the right. And we're going to limit the width of the wrapper. So let's just kind of close some of these other ones out that we don't need. So in boilerplate, one way you can do this is you want to set the max width to, whatever you have. So we'll say 1110 pixels, and we want to use our rem function. And we have an error because we didn't load our util styles. So what I want to do is use, and I want to load the util styles that we have in the SCSS util folder. So we want to path up from the boilerplates, which is in the global folder, to util. So we want to get out of the global folder with a double dot, and then go to the root, and then load our util folder. And we need to set a namespace. So I usually use as you. So now we have a success message. So now let's see what's going on here in our website. So I'm actually going to zoom out so we can see everything. Oh yeah, so here we go. So in this wrapper div, you can see that the width has now been reduced. So it's not going all the way across. So this is good, except, let me just actually comment out the rest of this copy so it doesn't show up. Okay. So let's add a little more lorem just to make it bigger. So we can see here that the width is now limited to 1110 pixels wide. However, we also want to center it. So one way we can do that is to, in the wrapper class, we want to center it, and we can do that with margin inline auto. And also just for being able to see things better, I'm going to add an outline. Let's just say blue. So now you can see now it is centered on the website, which is pretty awesome. So that takes care of the desktop widths. However, we also want to add space for the mobile widths. So if we go in responsive design mode, right now, because the viewport's less than 1110 pixels, it's just going to go 100% width, and we want to add that space. And one way we can do that is by actually controlling the width. And it's a little bit of a cool trick. I actually learned this from Kevin Powell. So the width, we're going to use a function called the min function. And in the min function, you can set two different parameters. I think you can do maybe more, but maybe it's just two parameters. And whatever is the lesser of those two values is going to end up being what the width is going to get set to. So for mobile, you want it to be 100% of the width, but you also want to add that space of 16 pixels on either side. So you don't want it to be 100%, but 100% minus 16 pixels times 2, which is 32. So I'm going to use my rem function, 100% minus 32. And it's centered still with margin inline auto. So now you can see that we have the space on either side, which is awesome, right? And then once we increase the viewport width, let's just get above that 1110 pixel container size. So now you can see the extra spaces on either side. Then we have the wrapper, which is 1110 pixels, and then any extra space gets put on the left and the right, which is pretty good. However, we can actually combine the max width into our width property, which is pretty great. The 100% minus 32 pixels is what we want for mobile. But then we also want to set the second parameter to be 1110 pixels. And I'm just going to delete this max width. So now what's happening is at any given viewport width, the browser has to decide what is going to be smaller. Is it going to be 100% of the width of the viewport minus 32 pixels, or is it going to be 1110 pixels? And whichever one ends up being smaller is going to be the final width. So what's happening for desktop styles is that we're at 1190 pixels of viewport width. And if we go to layout, you can see that the container is, the wrapper is limited to 1110 pixels. And the reason for that is because 100% would be 1190 minus 32 pixels. And that's 1158. And that's bigger than, so this is going to be 1158 pixels, which is bigger than 1110, which is why the 1110 ends up winning out. But if you go to smaller viewport widths, so for example, at iPhone, it's 375. 100% is going to be 375 minus 32, which is 343. And 343 is less than 1110 pixels. So because it's less, then that wins out. That's one way that you can set the width of your content wrappers with just using basically two style rules if you count the margin inline auto to center. This is a set of styles that I use basically in every website to limit the width in the wrapper styles. All right, now that we have most of our global styles and things set up, we can start writing the markup for the website. So before we start writing code in our HTML, basically what we're going to do is add some tags. And the main tags that you usually want to add to a website are going to be header tags, which will be everything in the top navigation. So in our case, it's this logo and then a link. And then you have the main content of the website in another tag, a main tag. And that's going to be basically everything else in the website. So under the top navigation is going to be all this main content. And then at the very bottom, there's usually a footer tag to contain the footer content. And here we just have kind of a simple logo and then social links. So let's start adding those tags to our markup. So in VS Code, I'm actually going to delete the content we added. Let's just delete this too. In the body tag, we're going to add our header tag. And this is going to be, again, the logo image and then that link. Then after that, you have the main content in the main tag. And then after that, you have the footer content in a footer tag. So this is kind of the main tag markup that you're going to be using for pretty much most websites. Now in the header, we can look at the design again. And when I'm building websites, I usually try to just start from the top and work my way down. So if we look at the desktop design, the header is going to be basically this area kind of here, and it's just going to have the logo and then the link. So let's just start adding that. I'm going to give the header tag a class of header, and this will make a little more sense as we continue writing our styles and adding classes. So in the header tag, we do want to add a div with the wrapper class because we want to limit the content width wrapper. And then here we want to first add our logo, and the logo is going to be in an anchor tag because it's going to link to the homepage. So a href, and we'll say / to go to the root of the domain. And then in the anchor tag, we want to have our image. So the image tag, and we want to load the logo file. So if we go to / and go to our assets folder, images, and then we have all the images here that we have from our design, and logo dark is probably what we want, or I'm sorry, logo light. We'll see how this ends up looking. It's going to be white on a dark purple background. So then next up is the alt text for the image. And for accessibility purposes, if this is going to be your logo linking to the home page, I think it's a good idea to put the word home in there. So I think the name of this fake company is Workit. I'm just assuming that's what it's called. So I'm going to say Workit home. And then that's going to be it for the logo. We also do want to add width and height attributes to the image. So width, height, and then we can see if we can get that information from VS Code. So in assets images, we have logo light. Okay, and this is just the SVG code for the actual image. I'm going to press Alt Z to wrap. And you can see actually there's a width and height attributes here of the SVG. So this should be the same. So I'm just going to actually paste them in there. So now we have our logo. And then at the other side of the header is our link. So this is going to be another anchor link. And then href, we'll just leave it blank because it's not really going anywhere. And then it had some text. So let's see what it was. Apply for access. So I'm going to copy the text element there, go back to VS Code, and paste it in. And we also want to add some classes to our elements so that we can target them in our styles. So I like to use the BEM approach for writing classes. That's block element modifier. So the block is going to be usually a component in your website. So for example, this header, I'm going to call this the header block. So for our image, I'm going to add a class of header __ logo. And then in the anchor link, the text link, I'm going to add a class, and it's also going to be header. And I guess we can just say header link for now. We can check the design and see if there's other elements that have kind of similar stylings. So it's like green text with a underline, and that's when it's hovered. And when it's not hovered, it's going to be white. So let's see if there's other link elements that are similar. And it looks like that's the only text link there. So I think the header link class name is going to be fine. So that's the header. Now, after writing the markup, we next want to write our styles for the header. And I'm using Sass, and I like to divide all my styles into different components. So in the components folder, which is currently blank, we're going to create a new file for our Sass styles. And I'm going to call it underscore, since it's a Sass partial and shouldn't be compiled to its own CSS file. It's just part of our styles. Then I'm going to give it a name of header. And this is on purpose that we want to match the file name header to the header block, the BEM block name for the header tag. So this is where we're going to put all of our header styles. And of course, since we have this subfolder with Sass partials in it, we're going to have to add an index.scss file that will forward all the parcels in this subfolder. And then we also want to make sure that we are loading the component styles in our main Sass file. So right now we're loading the global styles from the global subfolder. And that's why we're saying use global. We can do the same thing with our components. So use components. And now it's going to load our component styles. And you might be wondering why we're not doing the same thing for util. And this is because the util styles, I'm keeping all these Sass features. So these aren't actual styles per se, like CSS styles. These are Sass functions. This is a Sass map here. And in the functions, we just have a function. So these aren't supposed to compile the CSS. These are Sass things that we will use in our other existing styles. So for example, we already used our rem function in our typography.scss file, and this is how we loaded our util styles with the use rule. So anytime we want to use any of the Sass features from our util folder, we're going to add this use at rule in the Sass partial. So generally, I'm just going to want to use this in any new Sass partial because more than likely we're going to want to use our rem function or our breakpoint mixins, which we haven't done quite yet. So that's the setup for our styles. So now, going back to our header.scss file, we want to, and maybe I will first paste in that util at rule because we're probably going to be using it. Now I want to add our selectors for each of the elements that we had in our index.html file. So here's our HTML file, and I'm going to actually split the header.scss file to the right. Now we can see the HTML on the left, and we can start adding our selectors by referencing what we have. So .header for the header tag, which has the header class name. And then we have header logo. So in Sass, we can use the ampersand to reference whatever the parent selector is. So that's going to be the header class. So we can say header underscore underscore logo. And in the same way, we can say header underscore underscore link. And just because I've done this before, we have our wrapper div up here, but because it's in the header section, I'm actually going to add another class here. I'm going to say header wrapper, and that's going to create a new class that we can use to target in our header.scss file. So underscore underscore wrapper. And this is going to be for styles that we want to add to this div just in the header section, not in any other part of the website. So then we can just target this and know, we're not going to run into any conflicts with other styles. So now we have our header style selectors set up. So I'm going to close this extra tab. And now we can start writing our styles. So let's look in our design and see where we want to start. So the first thing I notice about the header section is that it has the dark purple color and then the text is white. So let's add that. So in our index.html file, we have everything in the header tag, and we're going to want to add the purple background color to the header class. So let's start doing that. So background color, and we're going to want to load the CSS custom property that we added earlier in our video. So var to load the custom property, and then dash dash, and VS Code has auto selected the different colors we created in colors.scss. So it's going to be that dark purple color. And then let's say color to add the text color. So var color white, I think is what it's called. Let's just double check. Yeah, color white. I'm not sure why it didn't autocomplete that, but now we have our two colors set up, and let's just make sure that things are showing up in our website. So it's a bit hard to see. Let's just inspect this, turn off the responsive design mode. Okay, so we have our purple color showing up. The link is not white. You can probably barely see that, but it's the default purple text link color from our browser styles. What I might want to do is add some styles to anchor tags to make it white. Maybe we just want to add it to the header link class because there might be other content that's links that we don't want to be white because it might be on a white background. So let's actually look at the design and see how we want to do that. We have this link here up in the header, which is white. And that's pretty much the only text link. So let's just add the style to just the header. So header link. We'll say color var color white. So now we have that. and we will probably have to style that underline a bit better. And usually, actually, that's one of the boilerplate styles that I add. A lot of people don't like that default underline that gets added to text links. So maybe under here, we'll say anchored tag, and then a visited, a active, text decoration, none. All right, so now the underline is not there anymore. The next thing we want to do is we want to get the sizing of the elements right. So let's just start from the logo image. And on desktop, it is 95, we'll just say probably round up to 96 pixels wide. That's an active state. This is tablet, just out of curiosity. Okay, it's the same as desktop. So they're all going to be 95.76 pixels wide. So that's a good thing, meaning we don't have to write some special styles on our website. So it's 97 pixels in the actual file. So I guess maybe we do need to just modify it a couple pixels. And the image is going to be the logo, the header logo. So width, I do want to put this in rems so that it will scale up or down depending on your browser based font size. So urem, and I think it was 96 pixels. And for images, what I also like to do is add height of auto. So this lets the browser set the height based on what the width is because it knows what the aspect ratio of the actual image file is. So I think the logo looks good. Now let's get the text size for the link here. So I'm going to inspect this. And right now, let's see where it's getting a font size from. So there's no font size that we set, so it means it's going to default to the browser defaults, which is 16 pixels. So we can check that by checking the browser styles checkbox here. This is going to load all the default styles from the browser, which is quite a lot. We can filter for font size. So it is currently 16. So now let's check the design and see what that is. So on the mobile design, it's 16. And then desktop, this is just for the font size, it is 18. And I think maybe that might match the other body text. AG body's 18. And then on mobile, it's 16. So I think that should follow the body font sizes. So let's see. I don't know if we actually set those yet, actually. Yeah, it looks like we didn't. Let's look in typography really quick. So we set sizes for the H tags and then the paragraph. So because this anchor link is not in a paragraph tag, and I don't think we necessarily want to add a paragraph tag to this, I might actually set this font size with the clamp function to be the default for the body tag. I like setting font size before line height. So let's do that. Okay, so now let's test this on mobile, and I am zoomed in, that's why it looks so big. Font size, it is 16. And if we change that to laptop, it is 18. Okay, great. So we can see that it is inheriting the font size from the body. So I think maybe we can delete it from the paragraph styles from typography because, yeah, any paragraph tag is going to inherit from the body. Things are looking pretty good size-wise. So the next thing we want to do is we want to figure out the layout because in the design, we have the logo on the left and the text link on the right. So kind of like this. So one way we can do that is by using either Flexbox or Grid. So let's get rid of the responsive design mode. Now we need to figure out what the parent's going to be. So here's a header tag. If we scroll down a little bit, we have the logo link here, and we have the text link. We want these to be the child items of either the Flex or Grid parent. So that means the parent's going to be the header wrapper div. So let's start adding our styles to the header wrapper selector. And I think it's going to be the same layout on left and right for mobile and also desktop. So display, I kind of like using Flex because it'll automatically put things in columns without setting anything else. And then we want to center things vertically. So align items center. So you can see the text link moved down a tiny little bit. And then we want to use justify content, and we want to use space between so that it will put the children on each left and right side of the parent. So there we go. And if we zoom out, we can see where the wrapper hits. Great. So that looks pretty good in terms of layout. So the next thing is we need to figure out the spacing of this, because if we look at the design, there is a lot of space above these two items and then also below them. So if I have these both selected like I have here, if I hold down Alt, it's 56 pixels to the top of the website and then 55 below it to the H1 tag. So maybe we'll just say like 56 on top and bottom. And that's for desktop. So let's also check what the mobile spacing is going to be. So here's mobile. So if I hold down Alt, it's 32 and then 64. So it's going to be a little bit different. So the way that I usually add this kind of spacing is I'm going to add padding to the header tag itself, the parent. And this is because we're adding space between the edge of an element and then its children. And I want to use padding instead of margin for this, because if you use margin, you sometimes run the risk of causing margin collapse, which can make things act really weird. And it also can act weird with background colors. I only use margin when I'm adding space between elements that are sibling elements. So for example, the H1 tag and the button, I think that would be a good case to use margin to add the space between them. But when you're adding space within an element and its children, I'm going to use padding for that. So again, let's figure out how much we need. 56 on the top, 55 on the bottom. Might just say 56 across the board. And this is going to be in the header. So padding block will let you add padding only on the top and bottom. Do I want to use rems or pixels for this? I might actually use pixels for the padding, because you want to use rems or EM units so that things can scale up, and you want to use that for text elements for font size. But for padding, it doesn't really matter if the space gets bigger as the base font size goes up. I think it might actually be better to use pixels for this so you don't get the increase in spacing. So that will kind of let you fit more readable content on the website. Let's just say 56 pixels. So now we can see we have a bunch of space. So it's kind of like this. And then we also, let's try to get the mobile one. So it's 32 and then 64. It seems really big for a header, but I think it's okay. You know, the end goal is going to be the same. So 32 and 64. This padding block of 56 is really just for desktop, which means probably need to add a media query. And we're going to have the default padding block be the mobile styles. So I'm just going to copy this. It was 32 pixels and I think 64. Let's just double check. 32 and 64, yes. So now we have our mobile styles here, which will be the default. And then we need to load our breakpoint mixin from our util folder. So the way we use this is you load the mixin with the @include, and then we have the u.namespace, and then we're going to load our breakpoint, which is the name of the mixin. Then parentheses, we want to add what width you want to have this media query be at for the condition. And for desktop, I'm going to say large. And I'll show you where this is kind of coming from. So now what's happening is in our website, we have in the header, we have padding block 56, and it's inside this media query of 56.25 EMs. And where that's coming from is, let's go into our breakpoint.scss file. So I'm going to use the VS Code quick open menu with Control P, and then type in breakpoints, and it'll automatically open it. And it's a little bit of a time saver. You don't have to search through your files. So what's happening here is we're loading the breakpoint mixin, which is this one here. And in the breakpoint mixin, we want to set a parameter of size. And the size is going to be the names from the SAS map that we created here, breakpoints up. And we gave each of these breakpoints 700, 900, and 1440 pixels, different names. So I'm targeting the large size, which is 900 pixels. So that's why we're loading u.breakpoint and then in parentheses large. So this is going to hit at 900 pixels, which is the 56.25 EMs. So now let's test this. And we have padding block of 56. And if we turn on responsive design mode and select mobile, then we can see it's loading the padding block of 32 and 64. Now the next thing we want to work on is the text link over here, because if we look at the design, it is white and then it has this green underline. If we see here, let's see how big that underline is. It's 3 pixels tall and it's that bright green color. So if we go to VS Code, and the link is going to be the header link selector here, we can add a underline. So text decoration, underline, and we can control the width. So text decoration thickness is 3 pixels. And again, I'm using pixels because I don't care if this scales up. And we want to move it down a bit because it's really close. So you can actually do text decoration offset, I think. Text offset. Oh, text underline offset. And let's just add 4 pixels to start. So you can see as I added it, it moved down a bit. So we can actually maybe check the design to see how much space there actually is. Looks like it's right there. It does say the line height is 32. If we increase the line height, that might add the spacing that we need. So 32 divided by 18 is 1.7, maybe 1.78. So let's see what happens if we change the line height to 1.78. So I'm going to just test this in the browser. So here is our element. So line height 1.78. And that didn't do anything. So we can just continue increasing the text underline offset until, you know, it looks closer to the design. So it's like just a little bit below where the descenders end. Maybe a bit more. It looks a bit thick, I think, compared to the design. It says it's 3 pixels tall, but yeah, I don't know. It just seems really big. I'm just going to make it 2 pixels. It just seems a bit too thick. Wait, why is the text decoration thickness not loading? I don't know why it's getting canceled out like that. Might be a bug. Yeah, 2 looks a lot better. I'm just going to change it to 2. Just seems really weird. Weirdly thick. There we go. And I think we should be able to change the color of it as well. For color, I think it was just green. Is that right? Oh, why is this not working? Let's make sure we have the right color name. Yeah, color green's right. This is very strange. I don't know why these styles are getting like crossed out like that. I wonder if you can't change the color of text decoration. So unfortunately, that means we can't use text decoration stuff. So let's delete this. There we go. So now what we can do is add the underline with a pseudo element, double colon, and we'll say after, since the underline should come after the text element. So with a pseudo element, you have to set content to something, even if it's an empty string. Otherwise, it's not going to show up at all. And then we're just going to create the underline by creating this as a rectangle. We'll say display block height of, let's try 2 pixels, and we'll set a background color of the green. So now we have, ta-da, this, and we can maybe try to move this down a little bit. I think you can use top. Oh, but then we'd have to say position relative. So I think maybe margin top. So something like maybe 4. And then if you want to use the logical properties, you can, instead of margin top, you can also say margin block start. That's basically the same as top. So if you're trying to be more modern, it's really only useful if you think you're going to be working with different languages that will have different directions, like right to left or, you know, top to bottom. But you can also just say margin top because they're still supported. I don't think that's going to go away. Anywho, let's do this. Oh, we already copied the background color. There we go. And then we did have the hover state where it hovers and turns green. So let's add the hover state. I'm going to add that before the after pseudo element because it's on the actual header link element. So hover color var color green. So now it has changed. And then if you want to make it kind of a smooth animated thing on the actual element, you can say transition And then the property you want to transition or animate, which is color. And then maybe 200 milliseconds, ease in out for the speed of the animation. And now it's a little smoother. Cool, so that is the header. So next up we want to build the hero. So let's check out the hero section on our design. So in the desktop design, usually what I'm going to do is see how things change from desktop to mobile, and then also just try to identify some of the parts that might be a little bit more complicated to build. So in the hero section, we have a headline, a button, we have this image of a phone. The background's purple, and it has these sort of spring images on the left and the right side. And then we have this curved bottom of the purple section. So that might be a little bit more complicated to build. So that's a desktop. Let's now see how it changes as the viewport gets smaller. So the tablet looks pretty much the same. The images of the spring look a little bit different, but everything is also centered. And on mobile, everything is also centered. And it looks like the spring images are not displayed on mobile. So they're only displayed on tablet and desktop. So the most tricky part, I think, of this is the curved purple bottom. There's a couple different ways that you can build this in your website. One way that I might do it is to use an SVG, and I might actually need to modify the design in order to export an SVG of really just this curved section here. So what I'm going to do for the hero section, I'm going to try to mark it off so you can kind of see it better. The hero section is kind of this whole thing here under the nav. Make this a little bit more transparent, and then I'll add also an outline so you can see that better too. And let's increase that outline a bit. So the top nav is, this top section here. Under it is the hero. And I'm going to make the hero extend all the way down to the bottom of the phone. So that means that for this curved section here, we're going to want to export a part of the hero, which is really just that curved section. And then we'll have to figure out how to sort of lay that out. So what I'm going to do is let's just hide this outline here. I want to click into the purple, and I'm actually going to duplicate this so we have another copy of this layer. And then I'll rename this. We'll just say curved hero bottom. So now this is the exact same as the purple background. But what I'm going to do is if you double click into this purple shape, it's going to turn into a vector that you can actually edit. So we have these different nodes, and I'm going to sort of move them down to this curved part here. So kind of try to grab those nodes and then just move them down till it meets the bottom node here, like that. So now it's kind of formed a kind of triangle shape. So we're going to do the same thing for the other node. Just kind of grab that top node and then move it down until it meets the bottom node, and then press enter to save these changes that we've made. So now it's just going to be this curved section. So if I hide the original purple background, now you can see that we just have the curved bottom, and we're going to export that as an SVG. And I might actually rename some of these layers here just so I can remember what it is. So this is going to be phone. All right, so let's export this bottom. So in the right sidebar in the export panel, I'm going to export this as an SVG. So then click the button, and here we go. So now we have this file in our downloads folder. I'm going to copy that. And then on this tab, I have the project. So I'm going to put this in the assets folder with the other images. There we go. Okay, so now let's kind of unhide the rest of the design so we can see everything. All right, now that we've exported that bottom hero image and we have the other images already in our assets folder, let's start writing the markup for the hero section. So in our index.html, the hero section is part of the main section of the website. So we want to put the hero in the main tag as opposed to the header tag like we had previously. So I'm just going to close that. So in our main tag, I like to separate out each different section of the website in section tags. So let's make a new section tag, and I'm going to give it a class name, again following the BEM model that we have here, and I'm going to call it hero. And the hero section is basically the sort of first part of the website that you want to use to promote certain things and try to get customers to come to the website and click on something. So in our hero section tag, we also want to create a div with the class of wrapper so that it has all those width styles that we added. And I'm also going to add another class to the same div, and I'm going to call this hero __ wrapper. Just like we did in the header, we want to create a hero specific wrapper class so that we can target any styles for this div just for the hero. So now we want to add the markup in our hero. We have that h1 tag, which is going to be for the main headline. So I'm going to create an h1 tag, give it a class of hero __ headline, and I'm going to copy the text from the design that we had in our starter files. I think that should be the right one. There we go. So now we have our h1 tag. So I'm going to make that an anchor link. So A, and then I'm just going to leave the href blank because it's not really doing anything. And then we want to copy over there. I think it's this learn more link here. And right now it's a link, but we do want to make it a button. So we're going to create some new classes for this button. And I'm going to give it a general, sort of generic class of button, and then also a hero specific class. So hero __ button. And we can add any more classes that we need later on, but I think that's pretty good for now. So under the button, let's see what else we have and go back to our design. We'll learn more button, and then we have the phone image. So let's add that phone image. So under the button, we're going to add an image tag. And for the source, / to go to the root project, and then in the assets folder, images, it's probably this image hero webp. So let's save that. And yes, that is the phone image. It is very large. So let's figure out what width and height attributes we want to add. And then we'll also control the size with our styles. The width and height attributes are really just for the browser to know the aspect ratio of the image, mainly so that it knows how much height to leave when it's loading the website. And you do want to put that in your image tag in the width and height attributes so that you won't have some content shifts as the image gets downloaded. So in our design, the phone is 767 by 441. So let's add that in our HTML. So width 767, height equals 441, and we'll save that. So it looks pretty good. Okay, so that's the main content of the hero. We are going to add those spring images, but we're going to add them probably as pseudo elements of the hero section. So we'll do that a little bit later. And then we also need to add the curved hero background. Okay, let's start adding the styles for the hero section. So I'm going to start with the basic styles, and then we'll sort of add on the more complicated styles later on. So to start off, the first thing that we probably want to do is add the purple background color, and then also start adding the text style so that the headline is white, and then we'll work on that button. So let's add the background color. So in VS Code, we actually want to create a new Sass partial for these hero styles. So I'm going to open up the sidebar, and in the components folder, we're going to create a new Sass partial. I'm going to call it _hero.scss, SCSS, and then we need to load it in our index Sass partial. So forward hero. There we go. So now we have our hero Sass partial, and we can start adding the class selectors. And we also want to load our util styles here. So I'm just going to go up into the header and copy this use util because it's in the same location as the hero. So we know that the path to the util folder is going to be the same. So we got hero, and then let's look at our index.html file. And I might just split this down. So now we can kind of refer here to get all of our class selectors, just to make sure we have the right ones. So after hero is going to be hero wrapper, and then headline, and then button. And we also probably want to add a class for the image, which I forgot about. So add a class of hero, we'll say image, and maybe some alt text as well. Mobile phone. Okay, so that's it for the hero. So now these are our selectors. So let's add that background color, and we're going to add it to the hero class div because we want it to extend all the way out to the left and the right. So var color should be that dark purple. So now it's purple, which is great. And then we want to style the headline. So let's say color var color, I think it's white. There we go. And let's just check the sizing quickly. I know we did add some styles for the H1 tag previously, so I just want to make sure it's correct. So in the computed tab, we can see the computed pixel size for font size. So it looks like it's 75. If we turn on responsive design mode, we're going to start with the mobile size. So it's 50 on mobile, which I do remember having to set. So let's switch to a laptop, and it's 80. So those sizes actually seem correct. So we don't need to add any more styles for the headline size, which is great. So after that, let's style this button here. Now, if we remember, we added a new button class, and I added a generic button class because buttons are a pretty common element on a website, so there is another button down there. So having some generic button styles that you can reuse in different sections, I think are a good idea. So we're just using that utility or helper class button for our button styles. Again, we probably want to create a new Sass partial for these button styles. So in global, I'm going to create a new Sass partial underscore button.scss, and then we want to forward it. So now we have button, so button. And we also want to probably load the util styles just in case. So let's just look at maybe another Sass partial in the same location, copy that, and then put it on the top. So now we have our button class, and we want to style the button. And I did notice that the text color was the green, so we can just start adding that. So color green. And let's go back to the design and see what else we need to add. Okay, so the button looks like it is the 18 pixels, which I think is just the body styles. And the button at the bottom looks like it's the same. So it's kind of the same size as the top link in the top nav. So I think those are all just inheriting the regular body styles that we added already. Now for the button, we need to add this rectangular border. So what I like to do is try to figure out how much padding to add around the text. So it looks like there's 13 on the top, 16 on the bottom, and then maybe 32 on the left and right. So let's try adding that. And I like to add spacing using padding. So padding, I'm going to use pixels because these are kind of small widths and it doesn't really matter if they scale up or not. So I think it was 13 on the top and 32 on the left and right, and then 16 on the bottom. And then so we can see the border, let's add the border. So border, I'm just going to guess for now 2 pixels solid. And again, I think if we don't set a color, it's going to inherit the text color. So there we go. So it looks pretty close to the design actually. So 13, 32, and 16. Let's just double check that design. Some of this height here is from the line height, which is 32. So let's just check the overall height of the button to make sure it's right. So 161 by 61. So let's inspect that. Looks like the height might be a little bit less. 61, yeah. So the font size is almost 18, and then the line height is 23. I think that's less than what we had. It was 32, 18 and 32. So I don't know if we need to adjust the line height. 32 divided by 18 is 1.7, and that is bigger, I think, than the line height for the body text. 18, nope, 18 and 32, that's correct. So we might actually want to change the line height for our global styles to 1.78 so that the button will inherit them. And that was in boilerplate. So I'm going to open the quick open menu with Control P, type in boilerplate. So we go there quickly. And yeah, so we set the line height on the body to 1.3, but let's set it to 1.7 to follow the design. So now you can see the button got a little bit bigger. So let's inspect that. And it is 159 by 57. Let's see here. Yeah, so 13 on the top, 16 on the bottom, 32 on either side. It's a little bit less, I think, than the design. 161 by 61. So there might just be some slight discrepancies. So it looks like it's 32. You know, I'm not gonna split hairs here. 161 by 61, it's pretty close. If we want to, we can kind of adjust the padding a little bit. There we go. So now it's 161 by 61 about. So we'll just adjust that padding in the button to match the design. There we go. Okay, so these are the main elements of the website. So the other thing we want to do is maybe center everything like we had in the design. So what we could do is set text align center, and that's going to center inline elements. Or it's not centering inline elements, it's centering the text in text elements, even though the H1's a block element. And it is centering the anchor tag because that is by display inline, which we might actually need to change. I like setting my buttons to inline block so that we can have a little better control over them. So you can see here with the default display inline, it's kind of going up into the descender space of the text above it, which you don't really want. You can see the phone's also kind of overlapping in there. And I like display inline block versus block because block is going to make it go all the way across, which you don't really want. I'm going to copy this display inline block and put it in our styles for the button. It is still overlapping a little bit. I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe the line height's a little bit too... We can double check that in the design if we want. Here we go, 80 and 80. So it's actually 1. So actually you can kind of see it here. It looks like there might be something slightly off about this font. Now, the other thing I'm noticing is that in the headline, we have this differently styled text for the tailored word with the green underline. So the way you can do that is in your HTML code, you can surround the tailored word with a span, and then that will let you target just that word. So let's go to the typography SAS file. So this is where we had all of our headline tag styles. What I could do is nested in here for the compound H1, H2, H3 selector, span double colon after, and then set content to a blank string so that it exists. And then we want to kind of do like the same we did for the top nav underline here. We'll add a height of 2 pixels, I think it was. And then we'll say display, maybe inline block, and then background color green. Okay, so that is not doing anything. Maybe we do need to add inline block on the span itself. Let's see if that does anything. So actually I might need to nest that inside the span. There we go. So now I can say display inline block, and that's still not doing anything. Oh, the width, we need to set the width. Let's try let's try display block. So it's going to default to 100% of the parent's width. Yeah, that seems to be working pretty well. There we go. It's kind of a nice little application of the pseudo elements. Okay, that seems pretty good. Okay, now one thing I am noticing is the text is centered because of text line center. The button centered because of, again, the text line center. It's affecting inline block elements. However, the image, you might notice, is not centered. And that's because we set it to display block, which we do want to keep. But if we let it default to display inline, like images by default are, then it will be centered with text line center. But then it looks like it's messing up some other stuff. So what we need to do is we want to center this phone image. What we could do is add margin inline and set it to auto. And that will center block elements by setting the left and right margins to be the same, which essentially centers the element. So let's copy this style, go back to hero, and then in the, oh, I forgot to add the image. I think that came after the button. So double underscore image, margin inline auto. There we go. So now it's centered. Kind of our basic styles seem to be working. I also want to maybe figure out the size of the phone. It seems a little bit big. 767 by 441. And, it does seem to be decreasing according to the viewport width. But, this seems like okay. Zoom out a little bit just to kind of make it look like a desktop. Yeah, so it might just be the zoom stuff that's making it look different. So let's get some of the spacing down, because right now these elements are kind of all cramped together. We have our headline, and we already added the space between the headline and the top nav with the top nav padding, so we don't need to really worry about that. So let's see how much space there is under the headline. So there's 37 to the button, and then from the button to the phone, it's 50. This is a case where I would add space between elements using margin because they are siblings and they're on the same level. So 37 under the hero headline. And let's see if that changes. 39, 40. So they're actually kind of slightly different. I might just round up and say 40 margin bottom for all of these. So let's do that. So hero headline, and instead of margin bottom, we're going to say margin block end of, and I might use rems for this because we are adding space between text elements. So we might want to try to maintain a little bit of readability with that. So I'll say 40. There we go. And then under the button, I think it was 50 maybe. Let's just double check that. 50, yeah, there we go. Okay, looks pretty good. Another thing I'm noticing is the headline here is, it's not full width, but on our website, oh, I included the top nav link there. There we go. Data tailored to your needs. So let's say max width. I don't know what that was, 20 ch maybe. Okay, so that's not enough. Max width 11 ch. And we do need to center this block element with, again, margin inline auto. There we go. All right. So the next thing that we want to work on is that curved bottom that we have under the phone. So let's take a look at the design and then try to figure out what our approach is going to be. So the curved bottom is basically an arc going all the way from left to right on the full width of the section. And it's kind of hitting maybe in the middle of the phone. That's for desktop. Tablet's kind of the same thing. So the arc is, again, kind of going from left to right, and mobile's the same thing. Obviously the width is smaller. Now, this is kind of a common design pattern where you'll have some background that has either, a flat, or it might have a curved bottom like this one, or it might be wavy even. And then you have an image on top of that, which is kind of overlapping the top and the bottom half of the two different colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap the image in its own sort of div. Let's make this a bit semi-transparent so you can see. And I'll add an outline so you can also see that. So we have this rectangle and I want it to kind of surround the phone. I'm going to wrap the phone image in this div. What I've noticed that some people do when they have designs like this is that they kind of build the background color with the purple going to the white in the normal flow of the document. And then they kind of make the phone be something like position absolute. So you can, scoot this down to make it overlap. But what I think I might try to do is kind of the opposite, where I'm going to make the background be the part that's kind of more complicated. So I'm actually going to create a linear gradient, which will go from purple on the top to white on the bottom. And I'm going to make it have a very strict line between them. There's not going to be an actual gradient. It's just going to go from solid purple to solid white. And then I'm going to, on top of that, add that curved SVG that we exported. And that's going to be what is creating the curved bottom. And that's all going to be in the background of the phone wrapper. So then the phone itself is going to be inside the phone wrapper and it will be displayed normally. So this is what we're going to try to do. Let's see if we can actually make that happen. So here's what we have so far in our website. And actually, now that I'm here, I'm going to add a little bit of test styles to set min height to 100 VH, maybe 150. So we can scroll down a little bit to show things. So going back to our index.html file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the image of the phone. I'm going to put it in a new div, and I'm going to call this hero image dash wrapper. So now I'm going to take the phone image and move it in there. And then we're going to add that purple and white background color to the hero image wrapper. We want to add a selector for the hero image wrapper. So we'll put it before hero image dash wrapper. Just so that you can see this a little bit better, I'm going to add an outline. So now we can see this is the wrapper. What we want to do is we want to make this go all the way to the left and the right. The reason it's limited right now is because it's in the wrapper div. So we set position absolute, left 0, and right 0. So now we have our wrapper. Let's start adding the linear gradient that I was talking about. So we're setting it on the background image, and it's going to be linear gradient. And the first color is going to be the purple on the top. Dark purple, comma, and then I'm going to set the second color to be the white color. So var color white. Okay, so now you can see I haven't added any of the color stops. So you can see we have a gradient going from top to bottom. So I really want the gradient to go halfway. So only the purple will be on the top half and the white will be on the bottom half. So let's set a color stop of 50% for the purple, and again 50% for the white. So now you can see we have a not gradient, but we have going strictly from purple to white. And this is good because now we can add that curved image on the bottom. Now the way that we're going to add the image is we want to add it in a pseudo element. So I want to add it to maybe the after element, and then that will be what will contain the image. In image wrapper, I'm going to nest the pseudo after element. So since we're using a pseudo element, we need to make sure we set it to quotes for the content so that it exists. And then I'm going to set it to be also position absolute. And I want to set it to width of 100%, so it'll take 100% of the width of the parent. And then for a height, we do need to set a static height because otherwise it'll be 0 because it is position absolute and there's no actual content inside. So I think I'm going to set the height to 100 pixels just to start. And then let's set background image, and we're loading the URL of assets, images, curved hero bottom. So this is just a start. Let's save and then see what happens. So we can see some stuff did happen. I think I need to maybe set inset of 0. Let's see if that does anything. Okay, so we can see I think it's appearing up here. So what I actually want to do is I want the image to be halfway down in the very middle of the image wrapper. And I can do that by setting a top of maybe 50% to start off. So 50%, and then we'll set the other ones to be 0. So it's going to be 50% top, a 0 for left, for right, bottom, and left. So now you can see it's changed. It looks like it is repeating, which we don't want. So let's set background repeat to no repeat. There we go. So now we only have that one. You can kind of see it looks pretty good, right? Obviously it's overlapping the phone, which we don't want. So let's put the phone on top of the pseudo element. And we can do that by setting position relative for the phone and set a z index to, we'll just start with 1. There we go. So now it's on top of the curved background. Let's now also test and see how it looks on different viewport widths. So, okay, so we can see there's a little bit of a problem here. When we get to a larger viewport size, the curve ends right here, which is not what we want. And we did set the width to be 100%. So technically this should be extending all the way across the parent, which it is. But you can see the image itself is ending not at the very edge. And this is actually due to how SVGs work. So by default, SVGs are going to maintain their aspect ratio. You may have noticed this, whereas if you work with regular JPEG images, you can easily get them skewed and distorted if you don't have the aspect ratio correct, which is one reason why I try to set height of auto to images. But for SVGs, by nature, they will maintain their aspect ratio. So what we want to do is actually break the aspect ratio because we really want to stretch this curved shape out. We don't really care if it gets skewed from the original image. We really just want it to stretch out. So we do need to make a change in the actual SVG file in order for that to be possible. So let me show you how to do that. So let me just zoom out so you can kind of see where the curve ends. And I think maybe because of the zoom, it's sort of adding that little extra white space. But we just want to kind of identify and make sure that the curve ends where we want it to. So let's go into our SVG file itself. So in Assets, Images, Curved Hero, Bottom, this is the SVG tag. Let me wrap it. And what we want to do is we want to add in an attribute called Preserve Aspect Ratio and set it to none. So what happens is, because by default, SVGs will maintain their aspect ratio. So if you want to stretch them, you need to actually set this attribute on the SVG. So that's one part of the solution. So you can see nothing really happened, nothing really changed. So I think we need to add some other styles to our hero image wrapper pseudo element. So right now, the pseudo element, you can see it is extending all the way out, right? But we need to make the background image stretch out all the way. So one way you can control the sizing of the background image is background size. And a lot of times you might use something like contain to contain a background image that might be bigger. And this looks like it works, but you can see it's not getting larger than the 1440 pixel width of the actual background image. When it gets smaller, you can see that it is just kind of shrinking the background image. So we might need to utilize that for mobile, we'll see. But for larger widths, the background size contain is not going to work because it's just letting the image be the size that it is. Another thing you might do is cover, and that will ensure that the entire element almost stretches the background image. And it looks like it works, but here it's kind of cutting off. This is because we set the 100 pixel height of this. So this isn't exactly what we want it to do, because we don't necessarily want the div to need to get taller for larger viewports. We really want to stretch that image and skew it and just make it kind of fit. So what we need to do here is set background size to 100% width and 100% height. And this is something that you wouldn't want to do for like a JPEG, because it'll most definitely skew it out unless everything is sized correctly. But for this SVG, it actually is working, because we can see now that the curve goes and it's kind of staying within that 100 pixel height. So let's see how it looks when we get smaller. And again, just kind of ignore that kind of white line that we have here. We'll probably have to make some tweaks for mobile, because when we go to mobile, and we'll need to size the image as well. Let's actually fix that. I'm going to add this as a global style rule for all images, but set a max width to 100%, so it can't get larger than the phone. Let's set height to auto. Okay, so for mobile, it's getting really curvy. We might need to set the height to be something different. We could maybe, let's try 10v viewport height, maybe less than that. So here we go. So now you can see it's kind of getting smaller. So that seems to be working pretty well for the smaller viewport widths. Let's put it on a laptop. Okay, so this actually looks not too bad. So I might actually just keep this height at 5vh. So that means that the height will get smaller as the viewport height gets smaller as well. Let's get rid of that magenta outline. I don't think we need it anymore. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Let's also figure out the sizing of the phone image on mobile. It seems like it might be a little bit big. I'm not really sure. Let's go back to our design. And for mobile, it's 320. We want it to look about centered and 320 pixels for mobile. So this is on iPhone, 375. And I think this might be because we made the hero image wrapper go all the way across. So I wonder if we add some padding on the left and the right. So padding inline, let's just try 32 pixels. Oops, no, this is not where we want to put it. This is the pseudo element. We want to add on the actual thing here. So padding inline 32 pixels. Okay, so that looks better. So now there's some space on the left and the right. This is on the image wrapper. There we go. Cool. So that's pretty good for the curved bottom. Yeah, so nice little curve there. So I think we're pretty good on mobile. Might need to add some space under the button to the phone. So it's 64 pixels on mobile, 50 on desktop. Let's just double check what that is. 50, 50. Maybe we'll just leave it at 50 for mobile and desktop. So let's go back to the design one more time. So the next thing we need to do is we need to add these spring images. We need these to be kind of off screen slightly. You can see that on the left and the right. The way I would usually do this is use position absolute again. And I like using position absolute sometimes when you want to kind of anchor the child element to a side of the parent. So what we're probably going to do is we're going to anchor this spring to, for example, the left side of the parent, which is going to be the full section tag. And then we can use transform to transform, maybe 50% of the width of the spring off screen. And we'll do the same thing there. So let's figure out the files that we need and also, where we want to add them. And again, I might add these using pseudo elements versus adding more markup to our hero section just to kind of keep things clean. So let's see. And I do have a extension in VS Code that lets me preview. It's called just SVG. Is the extension name. So if I click on this and it previews. Okay, so this is the one on the left, I think. This is the one on the right. I'm not sure what the difference is between, they look very similar. The angle is just slightly off. So what I think I might do is I'm going to use the same image for all three cases of this, which means that the website will only need to download one SVG file as opposed to three. And then I can just use transform rotate to flip them for the one that's on the right side. So we'll just maybe do background pattern 1 for all of them. Okay, so it's going to be background pattern 1. And I'm again going to just use a pseudo element for that. And I want to add it to the actual hero section because that's the one that goes all the way to the left and the right. So for the one on the left, we'll add it in the before pseudo element. So content, empty string, and then we'll have to set the size. And the size of this is 270 by 215. And I'm going to use rems for this so that they scale up. Then background image. And again, URL, assets, images, background pattern 1. And we'll set background size, contain. And that will make sure if this gets smaller, then it'll still contain the image. It won't go, off screen or whatever. Where are we? Here we go. So here's the before. Oh, yeah. So I forgot to add a display property. So let's go back to VS Code, display block. Okay, there we go. And we need to not repeat. So background repeat, no repeat. Now let's zoom out so that we can kind of see the wrapper and where that ends. So this is kind of where the wrapper ends. And this is where the image is. Let me think about this. Do I want to attach it to the hero or the hero wrapper? I think the hero because it is going actually off screen, not just outside the wrapper. I think I did it the right way. So here we have the spring image and we want to have it not take up space on the page because right now you can see, if I hide this, you can see that it is taking up height on the page when it gets displayed and we don't want that. So we do want to set this to position absolute for positioning purposes, but it also helps in terms of the display so that it doesn't actually take up space on the site. Position absolute. So now you can see it's not taking up space. The content just acts as if it's not there because it's been taken out of the normal flow of the document with the position absolute. Let's try top 0 and left 0 because we want to kind of stick it to the top and the left of the hero. And then it's going outside of the hero to the top nav. And this is because on the parent of the absolutely positioned child, you just set position relative so it knows where to anchor itself to. So now it's on the top and the left side of the actual hero section tag, which we can see there. Before it was floating up to the top of the page, which is why it was higher than it should have been. Okay, so this is good. So now we want to make it go off screen about maybe less than halfway. And we can do that by adding a transform translate to the element itself. So the spring image itself. Maybe we'll add it here along with the other positioning properties. Translate. And you used to have to say transform and then translate, but now they've split it out so you can set translate itself. So I'm saying -40% for the X translate, which is horizontal, and I don't want to translate it vertically on the Y-axis, so I'm going to set that to 0. There we go. So now it's going off screen. That might actually be a little too much. you can see maybe 4 rings and a little bit of the 5th. So a little bit less. So let's try 35. Scoot it back on there a bit. Yeah, I think that's closer to what the design was. Nice. So let's also check the sort of vertical positioning of this spring in relation to the other elements on the page. So kind of just eyeballing it, it's kind of aligned with the headline. So the headline top line is kind of where it meets that left edge. Looks like looks like pretty good. So I think the left spring is good. Let's do the right one now. And we'll have a similar approach for that. So the right one is here, and it's, if the bottom of the hero, like the hero text before the phone wrapper ends here, it's going to be sort of there. So we'll try to maybe anchor it to the bottom and to the right. And we'll also have to flip it and make it smaller. So this one is 141 by 113 maybe. So in a similar way, we can add some of these styles for the after pseudo element. And I might actually add a compound selector for both of them because they have some shared styles that we don't need to do twice. So display block, position absolute, both of them want that. Content of the empty string, they both want that. Background image, I think all the background properties can be shared too. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now we need to set the size of the after one. 141, or actually 142 by 113. So 142 by 113. Right 0, bottom of 0. Cool. So it might be hard for you to see that, but the spring is over there. And let's also rotate it. 180 DEG for degrees. That might have been too much. Maybe it's 90 degrees. Yeah, I think that looks like the design. And this is really hard to see. Maybe that's why they use different images. Let's load the second one. Background pattern 2 is probably what we want. So we'll just copy. We'll cut that line and set it there. And we'll change it for the second one. Okay, is that better? I'm not really sure. But then at least we don't have to rotate it since it's in the actual image. So I think that looks pretty good in terms of sizing. So again, let's figure out how we want to position this. So this is going to be off screen to the right just a little bit. And then the top of the phone is going to be a little lower than midway of the bottom oval. So positioning wise, it actually doesn't look too bad. So let's make it go off screen. Actually, I don't know why it's not already on the right side. Maybe the SVG is just kind of that big. 142 by 113. Yeah, seems right. Or actually, the sizing in Figma is like if it is horizontal, but it's been skewed, and the image itself is skewed. So the 141, that's going to be, 141 going this way and 113 going this ways. But here, it is so weird. Let's just try maybe 174 by 181. Yeah, so that's bigger. I feel like maybe that's closer to what the design was. Okay, maybe not. Actually, what we could do is, this is so hacky, but try to figure out about how big the SVG itself is. Like when it's been rotated like that. This is so silly. So it's like something like this. So 130 by 160. Okay, I think it looks a little better than what it was. Yeah, so 130 by 160. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. Seems like there's a lot of extra space at the bottom. It's probably because of my thing here. So 130 by 160, we're just doing pixels just to test. Okay, 130 by 135 seems to be a little bit better. Is that the right size? I don't really know, but we'll just try to eyeball it. Okay, so it's about a little below the button and then a little bit below the top corner of the phone. It's not too bad. Maybe move it down a bit. I guess we can maybe control it with translate. Translate. So horizontally, we want to go off screen just a little bit, maybe like that. And then vertically, we want to move it down a little bit. So let's try 20% down. Yeah, so now it's a little bit below the phone. Okay, we're getting there. I feel like that might be good enough. Let's make sure we get those properties added to our styles. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good for the springs. We're almost done with the hero section. The last thing we need to do is we want to add a hero state for the button. So, and by default, I think I might have coded the hover state as a default style. So it's supposed to be solid green naturally with the text as the purple. And if you hover over it, it's going to go transparent background with the green border, and then the text will turn green. So let's do that. So we need to open our button.scss file, and we want to add a hover state. So hover, and we're going to save this green color and the solid border. And then by default, we're going to make it color dark purple, and then background color is going to be the green. Let's see how that looks. Then we need to change the text color to purple when it gets hovered. There we go. Is that right? Oh, the background color should be transparent. There we go. And I need to set the background color. Oh, I need to set the border color. And then the color should change to green. I'm like all turned around here. There we go. There we go. It looks like the button's slightly changing size. Let me just zoom in so you can see that better. And that's because the border, it is green when you hover, but it is, it's defaulting to the text color because we didn't actually set the color, so it's purple. So the border's changing to purple, or it's starting out as purple, which is why it looks like it's smaller. So we need to set the border color to be green also. There we go. So it got a little bit bigger. You can see that. There we go. Let's also add some transitions. So transition, I want to transition the background color and the color. So unfortunately, we can't use the shorthand for that. We have to have a separate background color, comma, color. And then we can say maybe transition. We'll use the shorthand to combine the timing, 250 milliseconds, with ease in out. So now we should be a bit faster. 150. There we go. Looks pretty good. Let me just check that font weight. I think it's using the same font weight. Oh, it's bold. I don't know if I downloaded bold. Set just font weight to 700. I think the browser just kind of emulating that, so I think that's pretty good. So let's do another sort of last check here and see how it looks for mobile. So here's mobile, and we don't want the springs on mobile, so we do need to fix that. So this is back in the hero styles. So what I might do is hide the images on mobile. I'm going to use our breakpoint down mixin and set it to small. And then we'll say display none. There we go. So now it's not visible on iPhone. It is visible on iPad, and it's visible on laptop. Yeah, much better. Cool. All right, so I realized that I kind of made a mistake when I was building the curved bottom part of the hero. What happened was, if you remember, I'd said that I wanted to try to not use position absolute for the curved hero image. So I didn't. I made the phone, position relative. But I kind of forgot about that when I put the phone image in this hero image wrapper div and set that to position absolute in order to escape the max width settings on the hero wrapper. that we have up here in our width style. And the reason that this is not great is because putting the entire hero image wrapper as position absolute takes it out of the normal flow of the document, which means it's not actually taking up space on the website. And let me show you what happens. So let's say we start the next section, and I'm just going to add a section tag, add maybe an H2 tag. You can't see it on the website, and the reason for that is because it exists, but you can see it's kind of under the hero wrapper, and because this is set to position absolute, it's going to be on top of this section. So if I set this to position relative, so now you can see it's getting overlapped with the phone, which we really don't want it to do. So I need to kind of rework the code that we added for the phone and make it not position absolute and make it take up space on the page so that the content below it will actually be displayed below it instead of overlapping it. So the initial reason we'd set this to position absolute was to escape the max width settings on the hero wrapper. So one way that we can kind of work around that is to move the hero image wrapper out of the hero wrapper div, but still within the hero section. Let's try doing that, and then we're going to be reworking some of our styles. So in the index.html file, I'm going to select the hero image wrapper, and then I'm going to move it outside of its parent div, which is the hero wrapper div up here. So I'm just going to hold down Alt, press a down arrow, and then it's moved out of the hero wrapper div. So now we have hero wrapper div here with the text content, and then as a sibling element, it's going to be the hero image wrapper. So things look pretty much the same because we haven't really changed anything that would affect the appearance. So now we can sort of start trying to rework the styles. So let's go down to the hero image wrapper selector. And here is the position absolute, left and the right. So what I'm going to do is let's just delete these. So now it's position relative. And you can see now that since it is no longer position absolute, it's taking up space on the page and pushing down the extra H2 tag that we added underneath it, which is what we want. So now what we need to do is we need to move the hero curved bottom image up where it's supposed to be. Okay, so the hero image wrapper is here. And this is the curved bottom image, which we want to move. And right now it looks like it is, just kind of midway up that div. I'm just going to add an outline to the hero image wrapper so we can see things a little bit more clearly. Okay, so now we can kind of see the bounds of this element. So here is where this is. So what's happening right now is the pseudo element, and maybe we'll add an outline to that too. Blue, maybe a little bit lighter so you can see it. So right now, the pseudo element is almost to the top of the parent, and it is position absolute, which is what we want. We want it to not really exist on the page. I might need to set and this is a pseudo element again, I might need to set this to position relative so that it will kind of fix the positioning of the pseudo element after. Because right now I think because it doesn't have its position explicitly set, it's kind of just going along with the rest of the document flow. Let's try position relative. So now you can see the curve is again visible. So let's copy this rule and add it to our hero image wrapper. So this is good. Now the curve is showing up, which is pretty good. So maybe I'll just comment out this for now so we can see what things look like. So that looks pretty good. It looks actually a little curvy, like more curvy than I think the actual design was. And we still have this white line. I know it's like part of the zoom issue, but maybe we'll tweak the top property just to make the white not really happen. So if we reduce it a little bit, so maybe 49.95 or maybe 8. Let's try 49.8 for now. And I'll just kind of nudge it up a little bit. Okay, so now let's look at what we got here. Let's see how this curve looks. So this looks okay. It is a little curvy still, I think, if we compare it to the design. Yeah, you can see it's a lot flatter than what we have on our website right now. So we probably need to fix that. Let's just kind of see how things look as we increase our viewport width. So it's good. It's remaining all the way across, which is what we wanted for large desktop widths. And you can see that the SVG is getting stretched out as the viewport width increases. So it gets less curvy as the width increases, and it gets more curvy as it goes to mobile. So let's try to maybe fix that. If I inspect the pseudo element, we had set the height to 5 viewport height units. I might actually change that to viewport width units just because the height of the iPhone is 812 pixels, which is fairly tall. And if you compare it with, say, a laptop, this is like a default laptop screen, it's 900 pixels. They're not that much different, but the viewport widths are much different. It's 1440 for a laptop and 375 for the iPhone. So I think it'll do more of what we want if we change this to VW. Let's just test it in the browser right now. So 5VW, you can see it's a lot less curvy. So that's good. And then if we go to a laptop, it is less curvy, which is pretty good. Maybe a little flatter. Let's try 4VW. Yeah, I think that looks better. Test it on iPhone again. So I think maybe 4VW is where we want it to be. So here's the pseudo element. So instead of 5VW, we're going to do 4. And let's just comment out the magenta outline. Yeah, so I think that looks a lot better. Now, one other thing I noticed when we changed things was the spring images on the hero. So this one looks fine. However, the bottom spring is down here, and we also have some, looks like horizontal scrolling, which is not what we want. It's because of the spring image down here. One way you can fix the horizontal scrolling is to hide the overflow, and you do need to be careful where you set that overflow rule. I might actually just set it on the entire main tag. We could also try setting it on the body. So where do we want to set that? If we go up into our styles, I think maybe boilerplate, since we have some body styles here already. So let's add it there. So overflow X, hidden. Ooh, what's going on here? So without the overflow, we can scroll horizontally. With the overflow hidden. Oh, okay, there we go. I think maybe just because I was stuck on the scrolled to the right thing. Yeah, so I think it looks pretty good. We don't have the horizontal scrolling anymore. So now let's work on fixing the spring image. So my guess is this is happening because we had set the spring images to be pseudo elements of the hero section itself. And before, the hero image wrapper was not sort of considered in that when it was positioned because it was position absolute, but now that it's position relative, it is taking up space. And so the spring is sort of anchoring itself to the bottom of the hero, which we did code, but we need to kind of adjust that. I do still think that position absolute for the pseudo element is good for the spring image, but we want to figure out what we want to anchor it to. So the before one works, it's anchored to the hero at the top. The after spring, we want to kind of anchor it to maybe something above here. Because if we look at the design, we go to desktop design, it's kind of anchored to either the bottom of the hero text or the top of the hero image. So I think maybe one of those might be better. We could also just, if the entire hero section is this giant rectangle, we could try to just change the top value. And let's see what it is right now. So right now it is anchored to the bottom of the hero section. So what I might do is anchor it sort of halfway. We'll still anchor it to the section, the hero section, but I'm going to set the top to be 50%, which means it'll move it down 50% of the total height of the hero section itself. So let's try that as a starting point. And I'm just going to test it in the browser before we add our styles. So I'm going to uncheck the bottom rule because we don't want that. Say top 50%. So now you can see it kind of moved up. So what's going on is, let's add an outline so you can see this better. And then for the hero itself, we'll also add an outline. Maybe green, can you see that? Blue, okay. So this is the entire hero section. So now the spring is located kind of half the way down. And then we also set a translate to move it, additionally kind of off screen and down. So let's kind of get rid of that just to reset it. So that looks pretty good. So we'll probably want to adjust top a little bit because right now what is happening is it's anchoring the top of the spring to be the 50% mark of the hero. So the 50% of the hero height is about here, which is where it's getting anchored. So we could translate it more to be maybe almost above where it is right now. So let's try translate. And we'll leave the first 25%. That's going to move it off screen horizontally. So you can see kind of like that. And then 22% right now is moving it down 22% of the height of the spring itself. So let's try doing a negative. So maybe something like this. It actually isn't too bad. So it's like the bottom of the spring is kind of hitting near the top corner of the phone. Let's just refer to the design again. So the spring is here. So the bottom of the spring is kind of hitting, yeah, kind of hitting right there. So I think this is pretty close actually. Maybe up a little bit more. So we're going to go more negative. Yeah, something like that. And then in terms of being off screen, it looks like the second oval is hitting just at the edge of the page. So we can try to check on that. That actually looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust these translate values here for the hero after pseudo element. And we'll get rid of bottom too. And I think it was top of 80% if I'm not mistaken. There we go. Oops. That's not what we wanted. Oh, I think it was less, maybe 50. Okay, yeah. So this looks pretty good, I think. All right, so now that we have basically finished the hero section, we can move on to the next section, which is this features section. So what I like to do is just kind of check out the design and see how things like the layout changes from desktop to mobile. So on desktop, we have a 3-column layout here. It looks like the text is centered and then the number is centered within each individual feature. And then this is the tablet design and then the mobile design. So there's actually some interesting stuff going on here. So for tablet and mobile, it stacks to 1 column. However, for tablet, the individual features kind of have their own little 2-column layout with a number on the left and then the text on the right. And then the text is left aligned instead of centered like it was on desktop. Then on mobile, it actually goes back to being centered, but everything is in 1 column versus desktop being in 3 columns. One thing that I'm noticing is that with the text alignment changes, that kind of means that we need to use media queries to make that work, to go from centered to left aligned to centered again. Because while you can go from a 3-column layout to a 1-column layout without using media queries, you can use things like autofit in CSS Grid, or you can even do it in Flexbox with some other sort of styles there. Unfortunately, cannot change non-layout styles without using media queries. So we do need to use media queries to go from centered to left aligned and back to centered. Now in terms of the layout, probably going to do is use CSS Grid for this, and I'll just try to sort of draw so you can see what's going on here. So let's just take down the opacity a bit, and then I'll add a outline so you can see things a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is for desktop, we're going to do equal 3 columns here. What we do need to do for tablet, we're going to have a nested grid. Inside each individual feature, we need to split it into 2 columns, with the number being the first column, and then the text is going to be the second column, kind of like that. For desktop and mobile, where everything is kind of stacked, we'll still have our nested grid child items, but they're just going to be stacked vertically, kind of like this, inside each of the features. So basically we will have a outer grid for each of the 3 features, and then within each individual feature, we'll have a nested inner grid to control the layout for the number and then the text. So let's get started with that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to add the markup for this features section, which will be under the hero. So we have our index.html on the left, and here's our hero section. So I had started adding a new section down here just to be after the hero, so we can kind of add to that. So kind of like what we did with the hero, I'm going to add a class to this section, and this is going to be the name of the BEM block. I'm going to say features, plural, since this one will kind of wrap the 3 different features. We then want to add kind of our grid parent. So I'm just going to delete this for now. And we also want to create a wrapper div. So wrapper, and then we'll say features wrapper. This will limit the width to, the 1110 pixels that we had. And this is also going to be the grid parent. So in here, we're going to create each of the 3 features. So maybe we'll say features item for an individual feature. So then we'll add an h3 tag, and I'll give it a class of features item, maybe title. And then under that will be a paragraph, and I'll give it a class of features item description. I know it's a little bit long, but I think it just helps to tell you what each one is about. And then, we also need the number. So this one, I think maybe we'll set this as a div again. So features item, and we'll just say number, and that's going to contain the number. So we can start with a number 1. And then let's go back to Figma and copy the copy for the first one. So actionable insights, and I'll paste that in the h3 tag, and then copy the paragraph, paste it in there, and save. So here we have our markup for the first features item. And usually what I'll do is before, copying this features item twice to have the 3 features, I'm just going to create the sort of basic styles first, just in case we do need to end up changing any of the markup. So then otherwise we'll have to replace it in all 3 copies versus just the first one. So let's start with that. Let's get the font size for the number. So we're just kind of starting from the top. And this is with the sort of headline Frontend font family, and is semi-bold, and then it is 24 pixels. And then let's check the title. It's 32 pixels. So this is 24. And then let's check the font size for mobile. It looks a little bit smaller. I'll just delete this rectangle so we can click through it. And it's 20. So 20 to 24, which means we're probably going to use the fluid typography calculator. So we can start maybe with the mobile size. Yes, also 20 for, that was tablet. 20 to 24, I think it was. And then let's copy this. And actually, maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but we want to create all the different selectors in our styles. So let's maybe create our new Sass partial. So we're going to create it in the components subfolder in the SCSS folder. So new file. And I'm going to name it the same name as our BEM block name. So underscore features.scss. And since we created a new Sass partial, we need to forward it in our index.scss file. And I'm also going to copy our util use rule, since we'll probably be using that. Okay, so close the sidebar. And now we can start adding the selectors. So I'm going to right click the tab and split down so that at the top I can look at the HTML. And then at the bottom we have our styles. So features is the main class name. And then under that we'll say features underscore underscore wrapper, then item number, item title, item description. There we go. So let's save that and then close the duplicated tab. So now we have all of our selectors. Starting with that number, that was going to be features item number. We need to set it to the font family. So font family, I think it's called Frontend. And if we're not sure, we can maybe look at our global styles, because I think, yeah, in typography is where we set this font family. So I'm just going to copy maybe these rules and then paste them there. And now we need to set the font size. And that's actually coming from the fluid typography calculator. So let's just copy this again to make sure we have it. There we go. So here's our website, and you can see that the number is bigger, which is good. And again, I'm going to use our rem function just to make it easier to eyeball. So 20 is going to be the minimum font size, and then maximum font size is 24. Okay, it looks good. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create that sort of circle border that's around the number. And this is It's the same gray as the text, and then it's only 1 pixel thick, and then it is 48 by 46. So one thing I try to do for adding sizes for things surrounding text is instead of trying to set a static height and width, I try to size it using padding. So I do the same thing with the buttons, which we looked at earlier. I added the size through adding padding to the button element. So you can see I added padding on all sides, and then that's kind of what makes the button the right size. So we're going to try to do the same thing for this number here. So features item number. And I wonder if maybe I should have set it to a span so it's not display block, because right now it's going to take up the entire width. So let's try changing this to a span. Okay, and then we can try adding the border. 1 pixel solid, and then I think it was the color gray. I can't remember what it was called. Let's go back to colors. I guess dark purple. We don't really have a gray. And I'll close some of these other files that we're not really working with right now. Dark purple. Okay, so now we can see the border is there. It looks like it's slightly, top part's covered for some reason. So let's start just kind of adding some padding all around. And then I'm going to make it round by setting border radius to be 50%. I guess this isn't working that great. 50% for square items, it'll make it round. Or for rectangular items, it'll kind of completely round the corners. But let's see what's going on here. So maybe we need to adjust the padding so that it matches the design. So 48 by 46. So about 48. So right now it is 32 by 50. And I'm guessing part of that is the line height. Gonna kind of eyeball this. I think it was about 48. So now the width is about 48. So now let's kind of adjust, make it a little bit taller. So it's almost there. Yeah, that's pretty close. 48 by 48. So 9 by 18. And the reason that we are adding more padding on the left and right is because the number 1 is like a very tall rectangle. So adding more padding will seem to add more padding on the top and bottom. So let's just copy this, go back to VS Code. Okay, so now it's kind of a circle. Let's figure out what's going on with why it's getting hidden like that. So maybe it does need to be display block or display inline block, because right now it's display inline, and I think it's kind of making the padding on top sort of merge into the item before it. I'm not exactly sure if that's what's going on. Let's try display inline block. There we go. So now everything, including the padding, has been brought into the boundaries of the features item div. So let's copy that, and I'll add display inline block up to the top there. Cool. Definitely making progress here. Now we do want to check, because we had the font size changing from mobile to desktop, we need to make sure that the circle kind of remains the same. So let's try responsive design mode and select iPhone. And yeah, it looks a little bit off. So I think even though I was saying how I like using padding to size this, it might actually be more consistent and better if I set the size of the number using width and height. First, let's check the design. So on mobile, it is 48 by 46. We'll just make it 48 pixels tall. Same on tablet, and then it might be different on, I'm just going to delete that rectangle. 56 by 56. Let's try getting rid of the padding, and then I will set a width and height. And we want to use rems because we do want the size of this to scale up if you change the browser-based font size. So I'm going to say width, height, and then I suppose we will add a media query to change the size for desktop. So let's do that. So our media query is a mixin, so I'm going to load it with include U as the namespace, breakpoint, and then large. So for desktop and up, we're going to change the width and height to be 56. So now let's just kind of see how the website looks. All right, so we have our circle, and we need to fix the alignment of the number within the circle, but The circle looks pretty good. Let's try going to laptop. Yeah, so it's still a circle. So one way we need to center the number inside the circle is we can set this, instead of display inline block, we can set it to display inline grid and place items center. So now it's centering vertically and horizontally. Let's just check on mobile. Yes, it looks good. All right, so we have the number set up. Now let's get some of the spacing below the number. So going back to the design, on mobile, it is 24 pixels above the headline. So let's figure out how we want to actually code this, because we had said that we want to make this a nested grid parent within the sort of outer grid parent. That means that we can use gap to add space between the items inside the features item. So I think we can start setting that up in our styles. So features item, I'm going to say display grid. And by default, it's going to create rows for each of the grid items. So let's also set a gap. And I'm going to set this using rems so that it's more readable. So the space will increase between if the base font size changes. So maybe you'll set this to 24 to start, because that was a space in the design under the number. So now we have space there, but I'm not sure how much space is under the title before the paragraph. 16. So unfortunately, I don't believe you can have different gap sizes. So what we might need to do is set the gap to be 16 and then add an additional 8 pixels, I think, of space under the number. It's a little bit hacky, but I think it's okay. So let's change that gap to 16. And then under the number, what we can do is I'm going to add a margin block end of 8 pixels. So now there should be 24 pixels of space under the number. So you can see in the layout, there's 8 pixels of space under there. And then in the grid, let's change that color so you can see it better. So we have a gap of 1 rem, which is 16 pixels. And you can see that there's a little extra space under the number of 8. So 16 plus 8 is 24. So that matches the design. Okay, so next up, let's check the sizing of the title here. So in our design, it is 28 on mobile, 28 on tablet, and 32. So I'm not sure what we had set. So it should go from 28 to 32. Let's check out our font size. So 28 on mobile. And then if we switch to laptop, it is 32. So I think we had set the rules already, in our typography.scss file. So that's good. So we don't need to worry about that. And then in terms of the space under the headline, we already set that with the gap property of 16 pixels. So now let's just check the paragraph style. Okay, so the paragraph, it looks like it's inheriting the font size from the body tag. So it's 16 on mobile, and then on desktop it's 18. So let's see if that's what the design says. So 16 on mobile and AG body for desktop, which is 18. So yeah, I think we're good in terms of styles. Actually, one thing I'm noticing is that there's a lot of space under the desktop number. 56 pixels of space on desktop versus mobile is 24. So we'll just have to remember that when we kind of get to our desktop styles. But I think we're pretty good in terms of the kind of basic styles and layout. If we go back to iPhone. Yeah, so I think we are ready to copy the markup for the other 2 features, and then we'll kind of work on polishing up these styles. So in our index.html file, I'm going to go to this features item, and then I'm going to duplicate it with Control D. The default key binding is, I believe, Alt-Shift-Down arrow to duplicate down, but I've used a custom key binding to map it to Control D just because I use it pretty often, and I find Control D a little bit easier to press. Okay, so now we have the markup. I want to add some space on the body just so I can scroll down and show, I think, what did I do? Minimum height of 150 VH. I might change that to be padding block end of 50 VH. So now I can scroll down. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to update the markup with the different features. So the second one is number 2, and let's go into the design and copy the rest of the copy. Data-driven decisions. And then we'll copy that paragraph. There we go. And then we'll copy the third one too. So change that number to 3. All right, so markup should be updated now. There we go. Okay, it looks pretty good. So now starting from the mobile styles, we need to make this match the design a bit better. So the first thing I want to do is in the maybe the outer features wrapper, we're going to create another grid parent for that. And then we can add space between each of the items using the gap property. So let's check how much space we have on mobile. And I'm just going to delete the rectangle since we kind of used it already. Okay, so between them is 48 pixels of space. Oh, this is for tablet. Let's try this. 40 pixels of space. I'm going to go back into our styles, and features wrapper is the grid parent. So display grid, and then I'm going to say gap. Maybe we'll set this using pixels because it's not necessarily between readable text items. So I can see there's a bit more space. So it looks pretty good. And the other thing we want to do is we need to center everything. So we need to center the number and center the text itself. So to center the items in the grid, I think I might center it in each individual feature's item. I think that's what would work the best. So we should be able to do that with align items center. It's not working. Let's see what happened here. Oh, that should be justify because it's horizontal alignment. There we go. And then now we need to text align the text. So I might do it in the features item. And we have all the centering things the same. There we go. That's pretty good for the mobile grid. And I think we need to add some space under the phone before the grid starts. So let's go up and see how much space that is. So 47 pixels of space on mobile. I'm just going to maybe delete these. 56. So 47, 56, and then 90. So since we are using media queries to control the text alignment, it might actually end up being easier to use our fluid typography calculator, and then instead of setting the number to font size, set it to like a margin block and under the phone. So I'm going to do that. 90 for desktop. Let's delete this. 90 on desktop. 64. So 64 to 90. This is just so I don't have to use media queries to set this. And then I don't want it for font size, so I'm just going to do a little thing here where I'm just going to copy the clamp function. And then I'm going to set that to probably the margin block end for the hero. I'm going to do Control P to open the quick open menu and load hero.scss. And that's going to be for the, could set it for the whole hero section. I think that might be easiest. So the hero section, and we'll just set it here. So margin block end, which is the same as margin bottom, and we'll set it to that clamp. There we go. All right. So now you can see if we go to the layout tab, there's 64 pixels of margin bottom on mobile. And then if we go up to a laptop, it is 90. I think that's a pretty good solution. Then you don't have to put it in media queries, which I think can kind of complicate the styles. Okay, so I think we're good on mobile for this. Let's check the iPad. So we're still on one column, and then for a laptop, it's the same thing. So we also need to kind of limit the width for the tablet widths. But for right now, let's kind of change the layout to be 3 columns for desktop. So going back to our features SAS file, I'm going to add some styles in our features wrapper. And this is the outer grid parent that contains the 3 features items. So for mobile, this is good as is. It's displaying each of the children in its own row, but we want to add a media query for desktop. So include view breakpoint and large for desktop. And here we're going to create the 3 column layout. So grid template columns, and we'll say repeat 3 1FR. And there we go. And then if we change to iPad, it's 1 column. And then mobile's 1 column. So this is pretty good. And let's just check the gap space between the items for desktop, because right now it's taking the gap of 40 pixels that we had for mobile, and that's not necessarily what we want between the columns on desktop. So let's go back to our desktop. And again, I'm just going to delete the rectangles. I'm just going to group these together and rename it to be feature 2. This is just for my own sanity, so things are a little bit more organized. There we go. And this is the features. Okay, so between each one is not that much space, 26 and 26. So what I'm going to do is just change the gap. So one thing we can do is gap is actually a shorthand property for row gap and column gap. So we do want the space between rows to be 40 pixels. That's what we had for mobile. But we can add the 26 pixels of space for desktop between columns. So this way, this style rule will work both for the 3-column layout and then also when it's stacked to 1 column. You can see it's 40 pixels between rows and it's 26 pixels between columns. So I think that works pretty well. Okay, so I think the next thing we need to do is to get the tablet styles working. So again, referring to our design, the tablet styles is the main outer grid is still 1 column like it is on mobile, but within the features item, we are going to have a 2-column layout. And then it is 48 by 46 for that number. So let's do that. So this is going to be for features item. And this is only going to be for tablets. So this is kind of a weird situation where usually I'm just going to use only min width media queries, which we're using in my breakpoint mixin. But in this, we actually only want to target tablet styles. So let's go to our breakpoint styles and figure out maybe we want to create like a custom media query for this just because we only want to target tablet. So I think the size we want to target is going to be a viewport width, which is 700 pixels and greater, because tablet is 810 pixels wide. And then laptop is probably going to start around 900. So between 700 and 900 is where we want these tablet styles to be targeted. I could create a whole new mixin for this, but I think that this is kind of a sort of one-off case. So I might just create a manual media query in the features styles and just make sure that I'm using the medium and large sizes. So let's do that. So in the features item, I'm gonna, instead of using my mixin, I'll just say media. And we could actually try using the new syntax. So width, which is greater or equal to 700 pixels. And we'll convert this to EMs as soon as we know it's working. And I'm not sure if this is the right syntax, but let's say grid template columns. And the first column is going to be the number column. So that's going to be 48 pixels. And then the second column is just going to be auto for the rest of the width. So okay, looks like something changed, which is good. Obviously, we need to assign the children items. I'm just going to make sure that this is not affecting mobile or desktop widths. So let's change to mobile. Looks good. Change to laptop, and that looks good. Okay, so our media query is working. Now let's fix these styles. So my guess is that if we go to our markup, each individual features item, this is the parent. So that means that there's actually 3 children, the span, which is a number, the H3, and then the P tag. So I think what we actually need to do is, I'm going to go back to Figma and draw some more rectangles. What we need to do, I think, is this is the features item, like grid parent. And then inside that, we need to mark it out. So we want to have 2 columns. We actually also probably need 2 rows. So what's going to happen, I think, is this is going to be 1 column here. And then there's going to be the second column here, but we also need 2 rows. So we need to make our grid template something like this, where there's 2 columns and 2 rows, and the number is actually going to take up, this is a very inaccurate drawing, but the first column is going to take up 2 rows and the number will be inside it. So let's go back to our styles. And grid template columns is 48 pixels and then auto, which is right. And then grid template rows, I think what we want to do is maybe auto. So it'll just take the size of the actual text. So now we need to kind of assign each of the grid children into the cells within the grid. So the number, and let's see if we can turn on highlighting here. So what's happening here is you can see we have the 2 columns. So here's 1 column and 2 columns. Then we have 1 row and 2 rows. So what we want to do is we want to assign the number to be between column lines 1 and 2. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see better. So features item number, grid column. So we want to start at line 1 and end at line 2, which is right. And then grid row, we want to start at line 1 and end at line 3, which is the bottom line here. There we go. So that looks good. And that's kind of pushed the other content into the other cells, which is what we want. So this is going to be for the number. And I might just put the grid properties all together. There we go. And we need to vertically center the number within the 2 rows. So we can say align self center to vertically center it. Okay, it looks pretty good. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to left align the text. So here in the features item, we added text line center, and this is going to affect all viewport widths. But then within our tablet media query, let's add text align left. There we go. And then the headline is not getting affected for some reason. I think maybe let's look at the grid inspector and figure out what's going on here. I think maybe we need to control that with justify self start. Yeah. And the reason that the paragraph is not kind of weirdly centered like that is because it's so long that it's wrapping. So it's already going to extend from the left to the right. So maybe in our tablet styles, I'll say justify items start. And that's just going to kind of counteract the justify item center here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now the other thing we need to do is this is really wide. And let's check out the design. So the design looks like this is limited to 573 pixels. So we'll need to limit the width of the grid to that. So I think what we can do is we can limit the width of the features wrapper to a max width of 573 pixels. There we go. And then it's just going to be automatically centered because we have the margin inline auto rule. So I think that would work. Let's see if this affects the laptop. Yeah, so that's actually not great because it's making the entire grid really narrow. So maybe we'll set this max width to the features item. So now it looks good on desktop. If we change to iPad, there we go. And then we need to center this. Let's think about the best way to do this. We could center it on the outer grid. If we set justify content center, then will that mess up things for desktop? Actually, maybe it won't because it's still going to be centered. So let's see how it looks on mobile. Okay, and that's good too. So I think justify content center on the features wrapper grid seems to be a good solution. And let's test again. So this is mobile, looks good. Oh, I forgot to limit the width. I think we set it on features item. Max width, and we'll do rem 573 from the design. There we go. So again, let's start testing from mobile. Okay. iPad looks good. And laptop looks good. Let's also check the spacing on the tablet between the number and the text because it seems a little bit narrow to me. So here's tablet. Yeah, so number is 32 pixels of space. So that's going to be probably in the features item. So we had set a gap of 16 pixels. And I think that was to add the spacing for mobile between the rows. So again, we can maybe do the same thing by adding a different spacing for gap column. or a column gap rather. So I think we said it was 32, and I'm just going to do 32 pixels. There we go. I'm doing pixels for this one because it's not necessarily going to affect the readability. And we just want to kind of give the readable text as much space as possible. So we don't want the gap to necessarily scale up if we change the browser-based font size. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Mobile still looks good. iPad and laptop. All right. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, and one other thing that I'm noticing I kind of forgot about is the background color for this features section. Right now we just have it as the default white color, but if we go to the design, you can see it's actually not white, but it's this super light purple pink color. So let's work on adding that. And we also need to add a hidden H2 tag for the features section. This is really mainly for accessibility purposes, so screen readers can navigate through the sections a little bit more easily. So maybe we'll start with the hidden H2 tag because it's a little bit easier to do. So for accessibility things, I often refer to this website called accessibilitydeveloperguide.com. And this is really helpful because they have examples for different code that you can use. So I want to go to the hiding elements part. Hiding elements visually by moving them off screen. So this is what I'm going to do for this hidden H2 tag because we don't need it to be visually on the page. What you can do is copy this style for this class, visually hidden, and then you can add the visually hidden class to the elements that you want to hide visually, but still be readable by screen readers. So let's copy that. And then let's go to VS Code. And I'm going to add this maybe in our boilerplate styles. After the different element selectors, I'll add it after the wrapper class. There we go, visually hidden. So I'm going to copy this class here, go back to our index.html file, and in the features section tag, we're going to create an H2 tag with the class of visually hidden. There we go. And I'm going to give it a title of, we'll just say features. And what we're doing here is, this is going to be the H2 tag so that we go in order because you're not supposed to skip tags. We have the H1 tag, which is the main headline for the entire website. And then we're adding a H2 tag for the section. And then within the features section, we have those three items, and that's why they are H3 tags. So you're kind of going in order from H1 to H2 to H3. So now that we have this, it's not on the website, but you can see if we go into the markup, we do have the H2 tag, but it's just off screen due to our visually hidden styles. All right, so now that we have that accessibility part done, let's work on adding that background color. And maybe we'll start by adding it to the features section. And we'll probably have to also work on adding the background color up here to the image wrapper. So I'll start with just the features. Now we also need to figure out what color we want to set it at. So let me close some of these other SAS files, and here, color white was white, and color light gray is what I think we need to set it at. So I'm just going to copy this CSS custom property, go back to features, and then in the features class, which is the section tag, I'm going to add background image, and I'll set it to that CSS custom property. Looks like there's no, I didn't see noticeable difference there. Maybe it's a little too close to white. Oh, I set background image, not background color. There we go. Okay, so it's very slight, but it is different. We also need to make sure this isn't white, but also this sort of light pink purple color. So let's go back to here. So if we kind of refresh ourselves what we did for the styles here, the hero is here, and it has a background image, has a background color of purple, and then this linear gradient, which actually I don't think we need anymore. Yeah, let's get rid of that background linear gradient. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. So in our hero styles here, I think that was when we were initially trying to do the curved bottom thing. And what's happening, I think, later on is in the hero image wrapper, we do have this linear gradient, and it's going from dark purple to white. So this, so you can see the gradient we added is going there. So I think maybe instead of var color white, we can change that to that other color, color light gray. So let's try that. So this is in the hero image wrapper, in this background image, in the linear gradient. We'll just replace this. Okay, so now you can see it does have that kind of pinkish color there. There's a stripe of white here, so let's figure out where that's coming from. So I'm just kind of like going through all the elements, and we can see when we hover over the hero section tag, it has a margin bottom, and that's where the white is coming from. So I think I shouldn't have added margin block end for this, but we might just move this clamp function into the features section tag as the padding top or the padding block start, because adding it in the margin, if the element has a background color, it's going to sort of default to the default background color in the body tag, which is, I think it defaults to white, I'm assuming. Yeah, I didn't set any styles. So yeah, so let's just move that margin block end clamp function into the features section. Here we go, margin block end, and the clamp function will just kind of cut the whole thing out. Save our hero styles. Now you can see the white stripe isn't there anymore. Then we'll add this into our features section, but instead of margin block end, we're going to make this padding top or padding block start. Okay, so now we can see we have the space that we needed between the phone and the three features, but it has the background color since we set it on the features section tag. Okay, so that takes care of the top part of the section. Now we need to look at the bottom part of the section, because I don't know if you can see that, but it's really just ending right there. So we'll probably need to add some padding on the bottom. And I did notice in the design, we have the curved bottom again. So let's work on maybe adding the padding at the bottom first. So I'm going to figure out how much space there is between the bottom here of the text and then the bottom of here, which is, it says 171. It's going to be a little less just due to the curved bottom, which will probably use a similar approach to what we did up here with the SVG file. We can just start with 171. We can tweak that later. So 171 for desktop. And then let's just delete this stuff here again. Okay, so now 103 for tablet and 71 for mobile. Maybe we'll do the fluid typography thing. We'll just say 70 for mobile, and then it goes up to 170 for desktop. So again, we'll use this 170. Okay, and then we're going to just copy the clamp function. So again, we'll go into the markup and then copy just this clamp function. And I'm going to set that as the padding block end. So padding block end, paste in the clamp function. So now on our website, we can see there's some space under where the features text ends to the rest of the website, which is awesome. Okay, so now the interesting thing that we have here is that we have the similar curved shape that we had up in the hero section, and we want to set it on the features section as well. So one little thing I'm noticing here is, I don't know if you can see that, but it looks like the curved part's ending like right here, so it goes flat again. So I think we need to adjust the positioning of that. That's in the hero image wrapper after element. So let's try increasing it a little bit. Yeah, it's gonna so. I wonder if maybe I cut out too much of the shape. So let's leave the styles as is right now, and I'm going to re-export the shape. So going back to Figma, let's find where we had the curved bottom thing. Oh, here we go. It's on the active part. So I'm hiding the background, and here's the curved shape. And it's really just going really right up to the edge there. So I think what I'm going to try to do is, I don't know enough of Figma to add a point. Oh, there we go. That wasn't that bad. And then we'll add one to the other side too. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, it does work. Okay. Let's bring this up a little bit. And then I want to make sure it's straight. I think that's good. Then I'll press enter. So now it's going to go all the way from left to right, I think. But hopefully this sort of added height will make it not have that the flat edges that we had before. Export as an SVG. Let's try that. And let's go into our Explorer. And then our Downloads folder, I'm going to copy this and go back into our Project folder in Assets, Images. Paste it in, and we are going to replace it. And we shouldn't forget that we need to update the preserve aspect ratio in it. So in assets, images, here we go. And I'll press Alt-Z to wrap, and I'll just add it here. So preserve aspect ratio none, and that's so it'll stretch. Okay, so looks good. So let's just make sure this looks okay. Let's go higher than 1440. Okay, that looks good. And let's inspect it and see if we need to adjust the height. I guess adjusting the height doesn't matter too much since it's just kind of stretching. Okay, so that's a lot better, I think. What we need to do now is we need to use the same shape, but have it be, instead of dark purple, this super light purple. So what we can do is, since we already have this SVG, which is working correctly, we can copy and then paste. So now this is the copy, and let's just stretch this window out so we can see everything a bit better. I'm going to rename the copy, and I'm going to say curved hero bottom light because it's a lighter color. Now we have this, and we're going to change the fill to the light gray purpley color. So I'm going to copy this and put it in the hero bottom light and replace the fill attribute with it. And you can use HSL format in here too. It works fine. Okay, so now we need to figure out coding the curved hero bottom for the features. So let's go back to our layout here. If you remember, we set the curved hero bottom SVG in the after pseudo element of the hero image wrapper, and so that we wouldn't have to put it in the markup. But now we need to add this in the feature section. And ideally we would like to be able to do that without having to duplicate a bunch of styles, because these are going to be pretty much the same styles. The only difference is going to be it's going to have the other curved hero bottom SVG. So what I think I might do is, instead of setting these on the hero image wrapper, I'll create a new helper class and set the styles on that. And that way we can control the class to change the background image. So let's do that. In our VS Code, we're going to take the styles from here, the hero image wrapper after pseudo element. So I'm going to copy this whole thing actually. And I want to create a sort of generic helper class that we can use in different sections. So once again, I'm just going to put it in boilerplate. So let's paste that in, and we need to create a parent element for that. So maybe we'll call this curved, and then we'll move the pseudo element inside it. And let's just check what styles we might need to move over from the hero image wrapper. So hero image wrapper, so it's position relative, which we might need to move over because so it'll anchor the after pseudo element. So let's do that. And then the linear gradient, I think we might just have to set it separately on the feature one. So I'm just going to copy the position relative. And then padding inline, that's for left and right padding. I don't know if we necessarily need that. I'm actually not sure if we need that here. What happens if I get rid of this? Looks like nothing happens, but maybe we need it for mobile. Okay, yeah, that was for sizing. So we'll keep that for the hero one, but we don't need it for, you know, that curved image. So I think just the position relative is what we want to move over in the curved class. So now let's add that class to the hero image wrapper. Since we do need some hero specific styles here, I was originally going to just delete this whole thing, but maybe we'll rename this to hero curved. So now we need to update our styles here. So instead of hero image wrapper, we'll say hero curved. There we go. Okay, looks pretty good. And then we can delete this because it's already in our helper class. Yeah, looks good. And the other styles are good. And we don't need this anymore because it's part of the curved helper class. There we go. So now we want to add that same class and div to the features, I think. So we'll add this maybe at the bottom after all the features, and we'll see if this works. So here's the wrapper. So we want it outside of the wrapper, I believe. So I'll add a div and we'll say curved. I wonder if it needs to be outside of this section. Okay, let's inspect this. And obviously the color is not correct, but we can fix that pretty easily. The problem is it is adding it where the content ends, so where the padding is. So it's inside the padding, which is not necessarily what we want. Maybe if I move it outside of this section. So I guess that works. So maybe we'll do that. And then we want it to be the light purple. So let's first change that order. We're going to move the curved div outside the section class. And then we want to features curved. So now we can add a selector for it within our features styles. And we want to add the after pseudo element selector. And what we want to do is we want to, in boilerplate, set the background image to be the different image. Curved hero bottom light is what I think it was. There we go. Hey, looks pretty good. And actually, now that I think about it, what we could do is put this in actually another helper class so that we can control the style of it just in our helper classes. So curved. So if we have a curved and then a light class, and this is not what I wanted. Let's just undo this. So instead of curved, we'll say light class. So now what's happening is if the div has a class of curved and a class of light in the same element, then the background image is going to use the hero bottom light SVG. So let's just add that light class to our index.html. So maybe we don't need features curve. We'll see, but maybe curved light. There we go. So now you can see, hopefully you can see, we have that light pink curved bottom. Okay, and let's also check and see how these look on mobile. So the hero one looks good, and the light one looks good too. And then you can see it's getting a bit flatter as the viewport width increases. And let's go to laptop. And yeah, looks good and looks good. Cool. So I do want to just double check that bottom padding. So in the features section, we have the curved light at the bottom, which is 36 pixels tall. And that is kind of dependent on the viewport. But I think we might need to subtract some height from the bottom padding of the features, because right now they're kind of one on top of the other. So it's the padding and then the element underneath it. Under the text, and that's to the bottom of the curve. So 171. So we need to subtract, I think, the 5 VH height from the bottom padding. So it was 4 VH. So 4 VH height. And then in our features section, the padding block end was here. So this is a little bit, we'll have to change, I think, our inputs in the calculator. So initially it was 70 and then 170. So this is a little bit of a, it's not going to be exactly, but I think I'm just going to subtract maybe 30 pixels from it because that's roughly what was going to get subtracted. So it's going to be 40 and then 140. It's not a huge amount of difference, but I think there's just a little bit too much padding on the bottom there. So copying the new clamp, and then we'll set it here. There we go. All right, so the padding's just a little bit less. It's not really a huge difference. Okay, so this looks pretty good. Let's just double check the design again. Yeah, so I think that looks pretty close to what we have on our site. But yeah, things look pretty good. So I think this section is done. All right, so I was looking at the video I just recorded and I realized that you really can't see the super light purple gray color. So I apologize for that. That must have been very confusing to watch, but I'm just gonna tweak that color in the design and then also in the website so you can actually see it. So in Figma, I'm just gonna go into the color swatch for the ghost white color, and let's just make it a bit darker so you can see it a little bit better. So just to err on the side of caution, I might actually make it fairly dark. So it's 274, 95, 95. So let's go into VS Code and update the color. So it's color light gray, 274, 95, 95. So now let's check our website, and okay, now we can see colors showing up. And this is one benefit of using CSS custom properties for your colors, because I only need to update it in one place and it'll affect it in the different style rules that have used it. And we do need to update our SVG in the SVG file itself, since that's where it is here. Curved hero bottom light. And then again, we'll say 95, 95, I believe it was. We'll save. Okay, and now we can see the curve of the bottom. So yes, I do apologize for that. So let's keep moving with this website. We're doing pretty good. So we just finished the features part of the website. So now let's look at the design and see what comes after that. So this next section is this call to action, you could say, because this section tells you some info and then you can click this button to apply for access. So it's a marketing term, a call to action. It's basically the thing that they're trying to get visitors to the website to click on, either to sign up for something or, something else. So let's look at the mobile design. And one thing I'm noticing in all the different designs is that they have overlapping content. So you can see we have this picture of the founder, and then we have this purple color content block, and it's kind of overlapping on top of the image. And then this is the tablet design. And in the same way, it's overlapping the image of the person. And we also have another spring image overlapping on top of the content. And then for desktop, again, it's the same thing. So it's overlapping. We actually have kind of 3 different elements here overlapping each other. Now in the past, you'd have to use position absolute and z-index to overlap these elements. But because we now have CSS Grid, we can actually create a grid template where we allow these elements to kind of overlap the same row or the same column, and then they'll overlap on the website without needing position absolute, which is pretty awesome because there's some side effects of position absolute, like we saw earlier, that just make things a little bit more inconvenient to work with. So what I'm going to do is let's start with the mobile design and figure out what we want to do in terms of our grid template. Now, what I think I want to do is let's just kind of plot out how we want to design this grid. So I'll try using lines this time. So these are the different grid row lines. And for mobile, we only need to worry about rows because we only have content in one row. So maybe just for illustration's sake. So this is how we're going to set up our grid for mobile. And then we can assign, for example, the image here to start at row line 1 and end on row line 3. And then the content, we're going to start it from row line 2 and end it at row line 4. So that way they overlap in this space between 2 and 3. So one thing we do need to do is figure out how large each of the rows are going to be. And what I think I can do is set the first row here and the last row at the bottom to be auto, so that it can be variable size depending on what the content is. And then I'm going to set maybe a static row size for the row between 2 and 3. So let's figure out how big that is. So the image is 281 pixels tall. The bottom of the photo to the bottom of the content block is 320. And then the content block itself is 375. So we can take the height, 375 minus 320, 55. So maybe about 50 pixels tall for this second row. Okay, so now that we know that, let's start setting up our markup for the section, and then we'll set up our grid. So here's the features section. So we'll create a new section under it. Let's call this one CTA. And then in there, we're going to create our wrapper div. So wrapper. Then also give it a class of CTA __ wrapper so we can have some CTA specific wrapper styles if necessary. In the mobile design, we have the image and then the content block. Let's create one image tag with a class of CTA __ image. And this is going to be the image of the person. So let's go into assets, images, and it's probably this image founder image. And then we do need to figure out how big it is. It says 281 by 281, so we'll add that as the width and height. And I think the image is bigger on desktop, but these attributes are really just for the aspect ratio, so it's okay to have it be smaller than what it needs to be on desktop, because we can just control the width with our styles. And then for the alt text, This person's name is Lewis Graham, so I guess we'll just copy the name, paste it in the alt text, and maybe I'll just say headshot. So after the image, we want to add a div, and let's give it CTA double underscore maybe content. This will contain the other text elements. So I think the be the first to test headline should actually be an H2 tag. So CTA double underscore headline, and let's copy that. And then we'll add a paragraph with the class of CTA double underscore description. And let's copy that. And then under the paragraph, we have a button. So we'll make an anchor tag with a class of button. And we'll also give it a CTA specific class of CTA double underscore button. And then we'll copy the text. We'll leave the href blank and then apply for access. So now we have pretty much the markup that we need for mobile. And that spring image is really just going to be for tablet and desktop, so we'll add those a bit later on. Now we need to, in our styles, create a new Sass partial for the CTA styles. So in SCSS components, I'll create a new partial and I'll call it underscore CTA.SCSS to match the BEM block name that we created in our markup. And because we have a new Sass partial, we need to create a new forward rule to load CTA. So let's also copy that use util as u rule that we need in the top. And then now we're ready to create our selectors. So I'm going to right click the CTA.SCSS tab, split down, and then in the top we'll have our index.html, and then I can start creating these selectors that we need. So CTA class is going to be the first one, then underscore wrapper, and then image, content, headline, description, and I believe button was the last one. Yes, button. Okay, so let's save that. I'm going to close a duplicated tab. And now we are ready to start adding our styles. So let's see where we are in our website and see what things look like. Okay, so it looks like image is showing up. We have the text showing up, which is great. Let's go to responsive design mode and use the iPhone emulator. All right, so the first thing we can see, the image is kind of under this curved thing. So we need to figure out how much space we want to add under the curve. So I'm going to select the image, and then it's 100 pixels underneath the curve. So let's figure out where we want to add that. It's overlapping because we have the absolute positioned after pseudo element here. That one is, let's see, 32 pixels tall. And we'd set it at a height of 4 VH. I wonder if I set a height on the curved light thing, if that will... Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, I'm not going to mess with this. We'll just maybe add some additional space. So in the CTA section, what we could do is, let's see how much space there is on the bottom as well. And I might try to add it with padding. So we said there was 100 pixels of padding of space on the top, 74 on the bottom. So let's just try maybe on the CTA wrapper. We're going to say padding block start, or we can set both top and bottom. So padding block on the top is 100 pixels, but it's also plus 4 VH. So we can combine that, I think, with calc, 100 pixels plus 4 VH, maybe. Yeah, looks like that works. And the bottom was 74 pixels. So now we can see, yeah, so it's added up there. So yeah, let's just copy this, go back to VS Code, and then in the CTA wrapper, paste it in. And I'm going to use pixels for this bottom padding, and also I guess the top padding, just because you don't necessarily want the space to get really super huge if your browser-based font size changes. So you kind of want to maximize the real estate with the actual readable content on the page. So that looks pretty good. And the next thing we probably need to do is we want to create a grid parent around all the content here. So that should also be the CTA wrapper. And if you're not sure, you can look back at the markup. So we have a CTA section, and then in the CTA wrapper, we have direct children of the image tag and then the CTA content div. So you want those two elements to be your grid children, which makes the direct parent, CTA wrapper, the grid parent. So for CTA wrapper, I'll start by adding the grid properties maybe up at the top of the styles. So we'll say display grid. Right now is creating a grid with a row for each of the children. This is just kind of by nature. Let's change this to be a more visible color. Okay, so now let's start creating our grid template. And we did say grid template columns, grid template rows. And the first one's going to be auto, so it'll just take the size of the content inside it. And the second row is the overlapping one. That's the one that we wanted to be 50 pixels. And again, I'm just going to use pixels because I don't think it matters too much if it scales up or not, but we can always change that if we need to later. And then the bottom row is going to be the one that is mainly for the text content. So we'll set that to auto as well. All right, so now you can see our grid is set up. However, we need to assign each of the children to the grid template. So the image is going to be grid row. The start line is 1, and we want to end it at the 3 line. So it takes up 2 rows. There we go. So now you can see the picture is taking up 2 rows. Then we have the grid content, so grid row, and that one's going to start at line 2, and it's going to end at line 4. I guess we do need to explicitly determine the columns because I think just letting it auto generate placement is creating a second column because there's not enough room. So let's try grid template columns, and we just want one column of 1FR. Not sure what's going on here. So let's try setting grid column 1, 2. Oh boy. Let's try grid column 1, 2 for the text. Okay, so that's working now. Not sure what happened before. I guess you just need to explicitly designate all of them, otherwise weird stuff can happen. The other thing I think we want to do is maybe add the background color for the block. So that's grid. That's going to be the CTA content block. So let's say background color. And it seems to be that dark purple color. So color dark purple. And we also want to add the text color. So color var color white, I think is what it's called. There we go. Okay, so now you can see it's actually overlapping the image, which is pretty great. Let's also add some padding to that content block. So I'm just going to select the content inside there, hold down Alt, and it's about 30, let's just say 32 pixels of padding all around. There we go. And again, I am using pixels, so we don't have space taking up too much space. Okay, I think we also need to center the items in the grid. So in our grid properties on the parent, we'll say justify items center. And that's going to center each of the grid children inside their cell. There we go. Now let's check on the size of the text. Actually, we can start with the size of the image. So this one is 281. Let's maybe zoom in since we're on mobile. It's 281, and that's coming from the width and height attributes, but I feel like it's better to control the size from the styles. So let's say width, and we will use rems for this. 281. There we go. And I think we already have some styles setting the height to be auto for images. Yes. So it's going to match the aspect ratio. Okay, so after that, let's check the headline styles, and it's 32. And we're using our H2 styles with the clamp function from typography, filter for font size, and it is 32. Okay, now the space under it is 16. So that's one rem. So let's just add that space with margin block and urem 16. I'm using rems because it's space between text items, so you want to make sure there's enough space so it's readable enough. Okay, and then, oh, it looks like the text line is also centered, so let's actually add that. And maybe we'll set that on the content, so it should affect the headline and the paragraph. Okay, good. And I think the paragraph text styles should be good, 16 and 16, which is good. And the space under the paragraph to the button is 24 pixels. Under the content, we'll say margin block end, urem 24. Let's see. Why is that not working? Oh, CTA description. Whoops. There we go. And then the button looks a little big actually. Let's see what's going on here. The button is 197 by 64. Let's check the font size too, 16. So 16 pixels font size, and it is 197 by 64. 172 by 55. Okay, so button's a bit too big. It is 16, which is correct, but then 172 by 55. So maybe the button's smaller on mobile. 172 by 55. Let's check on tablet. Also 172 by 55. Okay, the desktop button does look bigger. 190 by 61. So even there, it's a little bit too big. 190 by 61. So let's try adjusting the padding. And this is just going to be for desktop, and we'll fix the mobile styles in 1 second. 190 by 61. There we go. So let's adjust our button styles. So Control P for quick open, type in button. There we go. This is the desktop style, so I actually want to add a media query. And I'm going to copy this line and paste it. And that's going to be for desktop. So now let's get our mobile styles for the padding. Okay, so back here in our mobile design, 172 by 55 is what it's supposed to be. So now we can do this. So, okay. 173.15. There we go. 173 by 55. So now we'll adjust the default padding, and that's going to be for mobile. So then it'll get bigger on desktop. Let's also double check the button font size for desktop, just to make sure we have that correct. Ooh, it's 18. Let's see, I think the default was 16 because it's probably just taking the font size from body. It is using the clamp for the body font size, so maybe it will go up to 18. Okay, yeah, that's close enough. So we don't need to add styles just for the button. Okay, so we are good for button styles. So let's go back to mobile, and this is looking pretty good. Let's just uncheck that grid lines just so we can kind of eyeball things. Okay, that looks pretty close. So I think we are good for mobile. Let's figure out the tablet. And it looks like tablet and desktop kind of have the same layout. Some of the positioning might be slightly different, but let's kind of do the same thing for tablet and figure out the grid lines. So the grid lines are going to have to be different. Okay, so for tablet, we probably need multiple rows and multiple columns. So since we have the row lines here already, let's kind of adjust those. So row 2 should kind of be where the content and the image meet. And we will have to probably figure out how tall maybe this middle row is again. And 3 will again be where the image and the content meet. 4 will be at the end here, and we will actually need another row because of that spring image, I think. Although if we wanted to, we could make the spring position absolute so that it looks like it's not really taking up space on the site. Like, it feels like this is just regular document flow and the spring is kind of floating. I might make this spring part of the content block and have it be position absolute, so then we won't need this extra row line. Okay, so now we need to create the column lines. All right, so we have the number of rows and columns that we want. What I might also plan out beforehand is the size of each of them for our grid templates. So I'm gonna copy this and we'll just make it a little bit smaller. What I'm gonna do is for the first row, I think I'm gonna make this be size auto. And then the second one, kind of like we did in the mobile, I'm gonna make this be a static height. So it looks like it's about half the height of the image. So 281, maybe we can see how far it is. So the top of the content block to the top of the image is 151. 281 minus 151. 281 minus 151 is 130. So this one we want to be 130 pixels. And then the last one will also be auto. Now for the columns, we'll probably do a similar thing where the first column is going to be auto, and then the second column will be a static size. So again, let's figure out what that is going to be. So the content block is 175 pixels from the left edge of the image. It's going to be, again, 281 minus 175, so 106. And then the last column will be auto as well. Okay, so we have kind of our grid planned out. Now let's start writing our styles for that. Okay, so going back to our CTA styles, the grid template is going to be in our CTA wrapper. I'm going to create a media query, so include breakpoint medium, because it starts on tablet styles. Maybe I'll just start by copying this. So the grid template rows, it's going to be auto 130 px auto. Then the grid template columns is now going to be auto 106 px auto. And we do want to use rems for all of these. So rem 130 106, because we want them to scale up. So now let's just see what we got on our website, and we'll probably have to adjust the assignments. So yeah, we're still on the mobile layout pretty much. Things are in one column. We want the image to take up 2 rows and 2 columns. So grid row starting at 1. And we can also, instead of saying the grid line to end it, we can say we want it to span 2 rows. And then in the same way, grid column starts at line 1 and spans 2. And we'll have to adjust the alignment as well. So we might as well do that here. So instead of justify items center, justify items start. So then it will be aligned horizontally to the left. Okay, and then for the content block will also need to add some styles for tablet. And the grid content for grid row, it's going to start on the second line. So second line, and again, it will also span 2 to go to the bottom 4th line. For grid column, in a similar way, it's going to start on the second column line and span 2. There we go. So that looks pretty good for the layout in terms of the grid assignments. Let's see what else changes. So it looks like the text alignment changes to left align for tablet and for desktop. So let's fix that. So since I already have a medium media query, I'm just going to change it back to left. And that will work for desktop as well. And now let's also check out the padding in the content block just to make sure that's correct. So now it's different. It's 48 and 56. So let's adjust that. So it was 48 pixels on top and then 56 for everything else. There we go. So having just 3 parameters in the padding shorthand property, this is still top, but then this is going to be right and then bottom. And because we don't have a 4th parameter for the left, it's going to take the same value as the right. So this will make the padding 56 pixels everywhere except on top, and that will be 48. So let's double check that in the layout tab. So yeah, 48 padding on top and then 56 on the right, bottom, and left. Okay, this looks actually pretty good. So the next thing we want to do is have this spring image, and we can see it's kind of aligned all the way to the right edge and then sort of halfway on the bottom edge of the content block. So let's figure out where we want to do that. So in our markup, we probably want to add the spring image to the CTA content div. And what we could do is use a pseudo element again, like we did previously. But since we did a pseudo element, maybe for this one, I'm going to use an image tag just so you can see the difference in how that works. So let's create an image tag, give it a class of CTA, and we already have CTA image, so I'll just say maybe spring. And then the source, we want to load assets, images, and then we need to figure out, I think this might be background pattern 3. And I'm leaving the alt text blank with an empty string so that screen readers know to kind of skip over that. Okay, so now let's just save that and see what happens. Okay, so now we have our spring image, and let's get the width and height, 221 by 212. So width 221, 212. With CTA Spring, I'm just going to copy that double underscore so we can add it to our selectors. So now what I want to do is I want to position this outside of the natural flow of the document so that it kind of overlaps the content block. So I'm going to say position absolute. So now you can see it's not taking up space on the block and it's just kind of overlapping. I need to set position relative on the parent of this so we can position it properly. And that's going to be the content. So we'll say position relative. And then on the spring, we can start trying to position it. So let's say right 0. So it goes all the way to the right edge like that. And then let's see what happens if we say bottom 0. So now it's aligning the bottom of the spring with the bottom of the content block. And there's a little space. I think that's just part of the image itself. Yeah, if we hover over that, you can see there's a little tiny bit of space at the very bottom of the spring image. So we also need to move it down. And I want to move it down about half the height of the spring image itself. So we can do that with top 50%. No, that's wrong. Top 50%, I think, is going to be related to the height of the parent, if I'm not mistaken. So I think I was thinking of translate. Translate relates to the height of the image itself. So translate 0. So we don't want to move it horizontally, which is why it's 0. And then the second number is for translate on the y-axis vertically. So that's 50% of the height of the element. So that looks pretty good. There we go. Okay, so let's look at the design. I feel like that's pretty close though. Yeah. So I think that's pretty close enough for me. Cool, so that's the tablet design. Let's just kind of test the responsiveness. I'm going to take this right edge and drag it in. So now you can see it's going to mobile, and we do need to hide the spring from mobile. So because this is only going to affect mobile, let's use our breakpoint down mixin and set it for small. And if you're not sure about that, let me just show you again where this came from. So I created 2 different mixins, one for breakpoints up, which is the main one that we've been using. And you load that with these breakpoints up sizes with the mixin called breakpoint. And this is going to create a min width media query. And then for breakpoint down, it's going to create a max width media query, which lets you target viewport widths that are up to the size. So that's why we're using breakpoints down for this one, because we want to target all sizes up to the small size. And I'll say display none. There we go. Let's now maybe see how this looks without the lines. So this looks pretty good. This is breaking into 2 lines, and I don't remember if that's what the design said. And it is not. Let's check the font size, 32 pixels. It is 32. I wonder if that's maybe... There's 31.5 pixels of padding. And how big is the content block itself? 343. This does look narrower. Oh, it's because I did a manual sizing. There we go. So now it's just 1 line. So that looks good. This is from mobile, and now let's check tablet. Looks pretty good. Yeah. And then now we need to do the desktop styles. So I'll go to laptop, kind of zoom out so we can see everything. So for desktop, things look sort of similar. Let's check out the design and see. I don't think we need to make any changes in terms of the grid template layout because they're kind of overlapping the same. We actually might need to adjust the sizing and also the size of the image. So let's just get the image size working. 477 pixels on desktop. And that's on CTA image. And we'd set the width to be 281 initially for desktop. I think it was 477, was it? So yeah, it's a lot larger. And then we'll have to tweak our grid template rows, I think. So let's maybe, I'm just going to copy this whole thing and then change it to a large breakpoint. And we don't need the justify items start. So now we will have to figure out the sizing of the rows. In some ways, it is similar to tablet. So we have the first row, which we'll probably leave as auto. And the second row is what is going to be a lot. I might actually make the first row a static size and then the second row, which will be here, the auto. Let's do that. So let's figure out how much space there is between the top of the content block and the top of the image. 173. So let's adjust that in our styles. So this is the CTA wrapper, which is the grid parent. So I think I said 173 for that first row. And then we'll say auto for the last two rows. And then we need to figure out the columns as well. So the columns initially was auto, 106, auto. So we'll probably do the same thing. So auto, and then the small amount of overlap is what's going to be the static one. So let's figure out that. So if I hold down Alt, from the left side of the content block to the left of the image is 382. And then the image itself is 477. So 477 minus 382, 95. So that means we want this second column here to be 95. There we go. Okay, so that looks better, I think. Let's check out the design. It seems a little bit off. Okay, there's more padding on this content block for sure. So let's get that correct. I'm just going to select all the content in here. So 64 pixels of padding. That definitely is more than what we had before. And that's in the content block. So here we go. And we'll just add another media query. I mean, I could use a fluid typography calculator again to calculate a clamp function for how the padding changes, but sometimes I feel like it's just easier to add a media query because it doesn't matter that much if it kind of fluidly scales up as you're like, dragging the viewport width up or down. So I know some people don't like media queries, but I feel like they're just very convenient a lot of the time. So padding, and since it's padding for space, I'm going to set it in pixels. Okay. Something about this still does not seem quite right. Might be because of my grid rows. Let's see what we got here. There's just a lot of space below here. I mean, I guess there is more space under the headline. So maybe let's just fix that first. So 32 pixels of space under the headline, 32 pixels of space under the paragraph. So let's fix that. So again, this is going to be breakpoint large. And then I'm going to copy this for the paragraph too. Okay, so that is more space, but the whole content block on the design, it's 413, 64 pixels of padding, which is right. So 413 pixels tall on the design. And on the website, it's 509. So yeah, this is like really tall. If I hover over each element in the CTA content block, we see this margin bottom on the yellow highlighting on the website. Then we see another margin bottom, but then under the button, there's no margin. And we do know this is already position absolute. Yeah, so it's not affecting the height. So that tells me that the height, this extra space is coming from something else. And because I know that this is a grid, I think that that might be affecting the space. So yeah, so I can see that we have the rows here. This row was auto, I think, and then this one, I guess, is also auto. I'm not sure why this is so big. It's kind of weird. So we set a static height for the first row. So the content block top is right where his eyes are. Just double check that with the design. So that seems right. And the second row is auto. And the third row is also auto. So I don't know. It looks like the third row starts under here. So let's see what happens if we make this a static height. I wonder if I need 3 rows for this. It's kind of weird that it looked fine for iPad. But for laptop, it just feels really big. I'm just going to delete this just to see if that might be causing. No, it's not. Let's try just having 2 rows for desktop. And then we'll assign CTA content to be grid row 2 to 3. Oh, that's grid column. Okay, actually that looks a lot better. Okay, let's just try adding that. So for desktop, we're just going to have 2 rows. And then the grid content will start on desktop, grid row 2, span 1. There we go. So the first one is there, the first row, the second row is here. Yeah, that seems to look a lot better. So let's do one more look at the design just to compare. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Looks like the spring is a little bit more to the left. So we can try another translate. Let's try negative 10%. Maybe negative 20. Because in the design, it looks like the spring, the right edge of it kind of starts at the right edge of the paragraph. So we'll sort of try to match those. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. So I think negative 20% on the spring for desktop. So breakpoint large, translate negative 20%. Okay, so this is our desktop styles, which looks pretty good. Let's go back to iPad. Looks good. And then mobile. Looks good. All right, so the only thing we have left is the footer, and it's a pretty simple footer. It has the logo, and then it has 3 social media icons, and it's centered. So let's see how that changes on desktop, if anything. Looks like it's the exact same on desktop. And we can see here the hover state goes to the dark purple color. And by default, it is a dark gray color. Cool. So we can start by adding the markup. So here's the CTA section. I'm just going to fold that. And let's create a new section. Or actually, this is in the footer. So we're going to go outside of the main tag and into the footer tag. And what I usually do is I'm going to create a class in the footer tag and have that be called footer. And that's so we can target the footer tag with our BEM styles. So in there, we'll do the same thing as we have been doing and create a new div with a class of wrapper and also a class of footer _wrapper. And in here is where we're going to have our logo and then also our social media icons. So let's start with the image and let's look in our assets, images folder, and let's see, logo dark is probably what we want. So let's save that. Okay, so we can see it is that dark logo as opposed to the light logo that we had up at the top. Let's also maybe change to iPhone just since we're working on the mobile version first. I'm going to say Workit home. And this is basically the same thing that we have done in the top where we want to add some alt text that is more descriptive for screen readers. So yeah, Workit home. So we'll do the same thing for the footer. And this also actually needs to be in an anchor tag. So anchor. And then in the anchor tag will be the image tag. And we'll just leave the href as blank. Although if it's a home, you can add a / and that will load the root domain, which is normally what you would want for your home link. So after that, we have our social media icons, and they are going to be centered. So I'm going to use Flexbox to center the 3 icons. So let's create a new div, and I'm going to call this footer. We'll just say footer links. And then in each of these, we're going to have anchor links, and in each anchor link will be the image for the social media icon. So anchor link, and we'll just leave that blank. And here we'll add an image tag, and let's give it a class of footer social, maybe footer icon. And I think they should be in the assets images. Here we go. Yeah. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let's check the order in the design. Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So we'll just try to remember that. Facebook. And then I'm going to select that and duplicate it twice. So I think the second one was Twitter. And I'm just assuming they'll probably have it named icon-Twitter. Yeah, there we go. Save that. And then the last one's going to be Instagram. Okay. And I am thinking about the icons because it's supposed to get darker according to the design when you hover over one of the icons. But I'm not sure if they included separate SVGs for the hover state color. It looks like they don't. So it's just icon, Facebook, Instagram, SVG. So what I might do is load these, instead of image tags, load the SVGs as inline SVGs. That way we can actually target the path of the shape and change the fill color directly in our CSS styles. So let's load the first icon. And what I'm going to do is literally just copy this whole SVG tag and then put the SVG in there. So now in the SVG tag, we have a path, and the path has the fill, and this is that gray color. And it looks pretty much the same as when we had the image tag. And I do need to add alt text to the SVG, but I can't remember off the top of my head how to do that. Inline SVG alt text. I think there's like a title or some kind of thing that you have to add in there. Okay, here is the inline SVG, which is what we are doing. Here we go. We need to add alt text invisible. Inside the SVG, add title. Must be the first child of its parent element. Okay, so in the SVG, we'll add a title tag, and we'll say Facebook. And then let's just check the SVG, and the text doesn't show up. But we can see the title in here. And let me see what happens if you hover over it. Will there be a tooltip? I guess not, but oh, there it is. Yeah, so if you hover over it, then the title shows up as a tooltip. Okay, cool. So I think we can do that for the other SVGs as well. So we're done with the Facebook icon. Let's load the Twitter one. Select all, copy. Instead of this image, we'll paste it in. So here it is. So SVG, and then like before, we'll add a title tag and say Twitter. And then we'll do the same thing for Instagram. So icon Instagram, select all, paste it in, and then add a title that says Instagram. That looks good. So I'm trying to figure out where we want to add the class. I'm going to add it to the SVG itself. Yeah, let's do that. So starting with the Facebook SVG, add a class and footer double underscore icon. Then I'll copy that, paste it in Twitter, and then in Instagram. So now we can use this class footer icon, and then when we want to change the fill color, we can target footer icon and then path and change the color that way. Oh yeah, we need to create a new Sass partial. So let's do that. So in SCSS components, create a new file, call it underscore footer.scss. And then in the index, we want to forward it. And then let's copy that use util at rule. And then we can start adding the selectors for the footer. So I'm going to right click the footer.scss tab and select split down. Then go back to the index.html on the top one. So now we can use this as reference for the classes we need to add. So after footer is footer wrapper, and then footer links, plural. That'll be for the flexbox parent, and then footer icon. And that should be, now that I'm looking at this, we probably need to add a class for the logo. Yeah, we didn't do that. I'm probably going to add it to the anchor tag. Okay, so footer logo comes after footer wrapper. So let's do that. There we go. So now we can close the duplicated one and we can start adding our styles. So now if we want to center the content in here, I think maybe the easiest way to do that, I'm going to add display flex and justify content center. And that should center everything. However, since these are the two children are the logo and then the footer links, and by default, Flexbox is going to put the children on the same row. So let's switch that with flex direction column. So now they're going to be in column, and now we need to switch, since we've switched the main axis, justify content. Center is not going to center things horizontally, but vertically. So let's try align, and I think it has to be items. There we go. And let's add the space between them with the gap property. So maybe starting from mobile, it is 58 pixels different. And also it's 74 pixels from the top. So 74 and then 58, 80 and 58. 120 under the content block and 58. So let's first just add the gap between the logo and the links in this parent flexbox. So gap 58 pixels. And right now, where's this space coming from? It's from the CTA wrapper. So there's 74 pixels of space under it. And then that's for mobile. And then for desktop, it's still 74. And I think that did change. 74 for mobile. We'll just use the same for tablet. And then this one was 120. We'll just say 120, kind of round it. And the space was added in the CTA wrapper padding block end. So let's fix that for desktop. So CTA wrapper, padding block changed here. So I might actually just update padding block end to be 120 pixels for desktop. There we go. So now back to the footer and mobile styles. So now this is good. I don't remember if there is a hover state for the logo, but we can kind of work on that a bit later maybe. Let's now do the spacing between the social icons. So if we zoom in a little bit, is 28 pixels of space between them. And I think that looks like it's the same for all viewports. 28, yeah. So to do that, I'm going to create the footer links as another flex parent and then set a gap of 28 pixels. There we go. So now let's work on the hover state. Footer links icon. So when we hover over the link, that's when we want to change the hover state. So I actually might need to add a class to the anchor links. So I'm going to say class footer _link singular. Then let's copy that and add it to the other anchor links. So now after footer links, we'll add a new selector for footer _link. And then when this gets hovered, then we want to change the color of the icon. So I wonder if we can target just the path within the footer link without having to use a class for the SVG. And we'll set the fill to the custom property, so color dark purple. Okay, great. I wonder if we can add a transition. So the path is inside the footer icon. So add transition fill 250 milliseconds, ease in out. See if that works. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, nice transition there. And maybe since we're here, we might as well add another hover state for the logo. So the logo is the anchor tag, and then there's an image in here. So what I might do is just, instead of adding a class to the image also, let's add the hover state pseudo element, or pseudo class rather, and then the image child element inside it. Let's change the opacity to like maybe 80% on hover. So you can see that's changing. And we'll also add a transition in there as well. So add the transition on the outside of the hover state. So opacity 250 milliseconds, ease in out. There we go. So now it does change. So I think that actually might be pretty good for our footer styles. Maybe I'll get rid of that extra space that I'd added initially. That was really just to make it easier to see things that aren't at the bottom of the screen. So we'll get rid of that extra padding block end. There we go. We add a little bit of space. I'll just double check this. 110 on desktop, 120 on tablet, 64. So I might just do 64 pixels on the bottom for mobile and then 110 for both tablet and desktop, just to make things a bit more consistent. So let's add that in our footer styles. So maybe we'll add it in our footer, the direct selector. So padding block end. For mobile, that was 64 pixels. There we go. And then for in our breakpoint, starting from medium, which is tablet size, We'll say padding block end of, I think it was 100. I'll just say 120 pixels. Okay, so now on iPad, looks good. Then on laptop, looks pretty good. Awesome. So here's a website on desktop. And then as we decrease the viewport width, you see the layout change. Nice, nice. Awesome. All right, so this is pretty much, I would consider this pretty much done. And that's it for the agency homepage build from Frontend Mentor. As always, you can see my solution on Frontend Mentor, which I've linked down below. And through that, you'll be able to check out my source code, which is on GitHub.